Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. This is coming out late on Tuesday, but forewarned is forearmed. Don't expect any more DC comic spotlights on Tuesdays. DC, starting with the first week of July, will be moving back to Wednesday release, which means we will not be dropping this until Wednesday. So, whether that's Wednesday at midnight Eastern, that's definitely a possibility for sure. But yeah, will be releasing these a day later, basically, because of DC's embargo rules. So just be aware. I'm sure all you hardcore DC fans know that you're going to be picking up your DC books on Wednesdays now, along with the rest of the books. Maybe you already did, and what have you. So anyway, sort of a big week this week. 12 books to talk about. I thought for the most part it was a pretty good week. There's probably only one book that I thought was below average, and even that book was is kind of an improvement over the quality of where that book normally is. Normally, that book's well below average, and this week it was only below average, so it's trending in the right direction, as it were. I think Rocky might have a different opinion on the week, though. So, what were your thoughts, Rocky?
Uh, yeah, well, actually, I would say the slight majority. I like the slight majority of the books this week. It is true.
Slight.
I'm just going to be a little bit. I'm going to be a little bit more vocal on the ones that I dislike. But honestly, uh, my rant is going to consist of really ultimately nitpicks because I am generally pleased with the opening issue for Absolute Power, and there's going to be a lot of tie-ins to Absolute Power, and I don't have to like all of them to still enjoy the start of the larger event as a whole. And so I'm still pleasantly surprised with Absolute Power, and I'm generally pleased about it, if not for necessarily all the tie-ins or not necessarily all the characters that may play a role in it. But it'll be curious to hear your thoughts moving forward. But it's an interesting week. Interesting.
Yeah. So everybody, you heard that his rant will be nitpick. So if Rocky has only one rant, that's the over under. So if
Well,
he has more,
The Oilers lost last night, so I'm a little bit
yeah, he's
upset.
kind of
But
yeah, he's grouchy. The Oilers lost, so just be prepared, everybody. So that being said, we'll kick it off with Action Comics number 1066. This is the penultimate chapter of House of Brainiac, written by Joshua Williamson, art by Laura Braga, colors by Prasado Rad or Pressy, um, Dave Sharp on letters. Uh, Pretty interesting. They actually split it up into two stories here, although the backup, um, it's sort of it ties in. It's almost like they didn't need to have it as a backup. It's almost and those credits I gave were for the backup. The regular main story, Joshua Williamson, still the writer. Rafa Sandoval handles the art with Miguel Mondoka, colors by Alejandro Sanchez, and letters by Dave Sharp. So the backup is all about Luthor and Lex Luthor and Lena Luthor, and it gives a little history of Lena and kind of their relationship and some backstory and what have you, and shows um, kind of the consequences of what happens in the main story with Luthor trying to infiltrate the hive mind of Brainiac, Lena along with him to try to stop what Brainiac is up to with his family. So it ties in immensely, like I said, almost to the point of it sort of not being a backup, but just a continuation of what we see happen toward the end of the main story. So pretty interesting. Um, we do also have the final chapter, Superman 15, is out this week as well. So no waiting, I guess. I sort of get the impression that DC wanted this wrapped up before uh, Absolute Power started in earnest next week. We do have the prologue this week, as Rocky mentioned. So I ultimately I think this, and we'll talk about it more after we talk about Superman. But I think this event was a success. It had a feeling of a classic Superman event or crossover, if you will, much like a lot of the ones in the Triangle era did, and we sensed that right off the bat, and it made sense. And it does seem to be pushing the character of Brainiac forward in terms of bringing something fresh to the character, whether that's the Brainiac Queen or just Brainiac being taken off the table to sort of reappear as something different when he shows up again. I mean, for a long time, he's been almost this kind of force of nature in the DCU, where he's become super intelligent, but all he cares about is going around in the universe and collecting samples of various species and planets, and his bottled cities and all that sort of thing. So he's not the villain that he was in the past, wanting to necessarily go after Superman. He just wants to do what he wants to do and have the freedom to do it. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't want to be living in bottled cities. So what he's doing is not right. He's taking away the freedom and of people, and he has the knowledge and the ability to perhaps save some of these planets that are destroyed, and instead chooses just to harvest them. And I mean, we saw what he did to the Zarnians last issue, where he allowed the Brainiac Queen to consume them. So yeah, interesting evolution to the Brainiac character, as I said. This issue, other than that, along with Luthor, Lex, and Lena trying to take on the Brainiac hive mind, this issue is sort of a lot of setup for what happens in the final part of the story, which, like I said, we'll be talking about this week too. So I'll leave it at that. Really enjoyed it. The art was really strong. Thought the backup was great as well. So yeah, overall, really pleased with this event. So what are your thoughts on it, Rocky?
Yeah, I enjoyed this. It's very obvious why Williamson had to be writing both Action Comics and Superman. It's because there's no way that this story would be finished, because it ties directly into the Absolute Power issue that we'll be reviewing in terms of what happens in the formations of the Brainiac Queen and her role in Absolute Power. And but this is Williamson does a reasonably good job. I get there's a slight feeling that maybe the feeling was the ending was maybe rushed a bit, but it hit enough of the emotional high points for the characters that it basically worked for me. I like Lex Luthor's character arc here in Action Comics, where he's very clearly, Lex Luthor and Brainiac actually have something in common. Lex Luthor loves his daughter Lena, and he's prepared to sacrifice himself in order to save Lena, because in this issue, at the end of this issue, Brainiac hooks Lena up to basically all his machines, because even though Brainiac himself is a 12th level intellect, even his mind doesn't have the capacity to absorb all the knowledge that he wants in the universe. And he wants all the knowledge in the universe. That's what Brainiac wants. But Lena is capable, because of her origins, which they go through here. She's capable of absorbing more knowledge than Lex, but it could ultimately kill her. So Lex Luthor is going to step up to the plate to try to save his daughter Lena. Meanwhile, there's an interesting little revelation about Brainiac here that all of us readers, it's been pretty much spelled out from the beginning as this, and that is that Brainiac, this isn't just about a Brainiac wanting to create a Brainiac Queen. Brainiac actually has a family. He's got a son, Valdox. He's got a wife, Lysol, who shows up. But he's ostracized his own family against him. And ultimately, what Brainiac can't acknowledge, but what is so obvious to the reader and obvious to the Superman family, is that Brainiac wants a family. Brainiac wants to be loved. It's not actually knowledge. I mean, Brainiac talks about feeling something is missing. It's not knowledge he's missing. It's love. It's having a family. That's really it, and it's fairly obvious. And that's what I think works for this storyline. And is just these different types of families. You got the Superman family, whose success is premised on the fact that they love each other and they overcome all the obstacles. You even have Lobo's family. Both Lobo and Superman are lost sons, but this issue begins with Lobo freeing the Superman family because Brainiac betrayed Lobo, kills all the Zarnians. Once again, Lobo is the last son of Zarnia, because, I mean, this time Lobo didn't wipe out Zarnia. It's literally Brainiac. And so Lobo loses his family, loses an entire planet. And then you got Brainiac, his dysfunctional relationship with his family. And you got Luthor with Lena Luthor, Lex with Lena, and there's a lot of themes and metaphors regarding around family here, and they all entwine with each other, and they work pretty well. And I really appreciated the origin of Lena Luthor, because for when Lex steps up to the plate, the backup shows the interior mental, the psychological battle that's taken place between Lex and Lena on one side, and the inner workings of Brainiac's machinations on the other. And we get the full scope of Lena's origin, or at least Williamson's interpretation of Lena's origin, which is helpful because I'm a longtime reader, but I forget the details. So I really appreciated the backup more than anything. And that leads into the final chapter, which we will discuss when we review Superman issue 15. But overall, I thought this was a really good penultimate issue to this particular storyline. Yeah. Oh, you're on mute. Sorry.
Like, how can I be on mute? I never put it on mute. I must have clicked it accidentally. So annoying. All right. Anyway, up next, Detective Comics number 1086. Ram V is the writer. Stefano Raphael on the art. Colors by Lee Luffridge. Letters by Ariana Mayer. Oh, man, I go back and forth so much on this story. From enjoying it to just like, can this end? I mean, absolutely no chance whatsoever to have one artist on this. It's gone on so long. And it was coming out twice a month for a while. And yeah, just not possible, but it's annoying that there's been so many different art styles on this. Because like I said, it feels like it drags, and if in any way they could have had, one artist, at least we would have had that continuity to make it feel like it was going somewhere, but that's not the case either. And so as much as I loved the splash page, which is really cool, seeing Batman talking to Two-Face, and a bunch of Two-Face's henchmen are kind of strewn out all over this train yard. It was really cool. And, overall the art is pretty strong. But again, the problem I have with the art is just, lack of consistency. And then for some reason, it's not entirely clear to me. We have Two-Face's daughter, Duella Dent, show up, who was, I don't want to say corrupted, but or romance, not the right word, influenced by the Joker, I guess. And so we had the Joker show up here. She seems to be doing really well. She's, living with this older couple, and she's kind of put her past behind her and seems to be living a happy life. And then the Joker shows up and says a few words to her, and she like loses it and goes crazy again and kills the people that she's living with, whatever. It seems so trite, to be honest. Here we go again with the Joker and his magical power. He can just show up, apparently, and say a couple words to Duella Dent, and she's immediately as well adjusted as she was a moment ago. Now she's completely crazy again, to the point where she's murdering people. I'm so sick and tired of these kind of Joker tropes. It's not new. It's not fresh. It feels redundant. It feels derivative. And frankly, it's kind of insulting that anybody with any level of intelligence would believe that the Joker can just magically come and say a few words to somebody and it's going to drive them crazy to the point of murder. Like it stretches any sort of realism at all. So I absolutely hated that part of the story. The rest of the story with Batman trying to figure out what the Organs are up to and what have you, in a way it also feels a little bit derivative, which I've said that before about this story, right? Like this whole idea of going back and retconning in people that were around at the founding of Gotham and what have you, and they're trying to take control or whatever. There's not really anything new here. And for that reason, I think it's why I have a lot less patience for the amount of time that it's taken for the story to reach a conclusion. And it's just been inconsistent. I would say at best it's average, but sometimes it dips below average. But also beyond quality consistency, the pacing has been inconsistent, where we just get certain issues that just drag on where nothing happens. This one kind of leans toward that more than anything. Although we do see Batman in his new costume with the blood red bat on it, which is just really strange rendering. along with Azrael in his old Asbat suit, and Cassandra Cain and Nightwing, and they're going to go try to stop the Orgums. I don't want to say once and for all, because God knows when this thing is going to end. Just when you think we might be coming to some sort of resolution, it starts dragging again. I actually thought the backup, which we'll talk about in just a second, was infinitely better. The main story, way more entertaining. I'm typically a fan of Ram V. I think he's a very talented writer, but and maybe this is what he wanted, this big sprawling Batman story that feels like it's never going to end. I mean, if that's what he was going for, then I guess he succeeded, but I am not the audience for it. Like, this has just gone on way too long. We're over 2 years in at this point. Like, oh my God, this could have been done in 6 issues. So I cannot wait for this thing to be over. Like, and I think I've said it before. Like, I'm just done. I'm just done, man. Like, I'm done with the inconsistency of pacing, the inconsistency of story, and the inconsistency of art. Like, this is not what Detective Comics should be in my mind. Like, I'm just over it. I'm almost to the point where I think maybe I'll just stop reading until it's over, and then just like plow through it all at once. Kind of like when you got to take your medicine and you kind of hold your nose. In which case you might be talking about these on your own, week in, week out, Rocky, until it's all said and done. I just don't know that I can do it anymore, man. Like, it's such a slog to read. It's just not enjoyable at all. So yeah, maybe you got something else out of it. I don't know. What are your thoughts on it?
I feel slightly better about it than you, but I have to reluctantly concede that it does feel like a slog. And on the one hand, I admire, I can give some props to Ram V, because he is, to a certain extent, he's honoring his past continuity, his continuity, and his friend Dan Waters' continuity, because we have the Ten-Eyed Man show up. But he doesn't, readers, if readers have just been reading Detective Comics, they're not going to know who the Ten-Eyed Man is. They're not going to know who Joy DaCosta is, Joy DaCosta, who has gone missing because of that miniseries of Batman or Arkham of the Many Worlds. And I mean, so you and I have reviewed, you and I have reviewed all that, so we're sort of familiar with it. But he's not spoon feeding the readers at all. But unfortunately, it's Ram V should be spoon feeding the readers. It shouldn't feel. It feels a little bit confusing. And for a story that's gone on for 2 years, this should not feel that way. This should not feel that way, that, we're near the end. There should be far more clarity as to what's going on. Now, I feel I do have some idea what's going on. I do, but it's still a little bit wonky for me. And why on earth are you introducing a new character, Joker's daughter, Duela Dent, in this issue? Why? I mean, why are you introducing new players now? And even another villain, the Shadow Thief. Why? Shadow Angel? Is that what it is? Yeah. I mean, it's just. I think it's because I just want this to end. And because literally, didn't we have similar plot points like 6, 7, 8, 10, 9 issues ago or something? And then sort of rehashing them again. It just feels that way. But having said that, Batman confronts Harvey, and he flashes some marbles that are emanating a tone of some kind. And I think that helps with Harvey Dent. Because he's talking to Two-Face, but it helps Two-Face overcome the darkness, the Asmir effects. And so he talks to Harvey, and then Batman apologizes to Harvey for not appreciating how important darkness is, and that you can't separate your darkness from yourself. And what the Orgums want to do, the Orgums want to separate the darkness from Gotham. And that's bad, because people have to learn about the balance. They got to learn that you need your darkness as well as the light. You need the darkness as well. It's almost like a really twisted form of watching somebody who's trying to understand Star Wars. It's like, it's about balance. You can't eliminate the Sith, you can't eliminate the Jedi. There always must be balance in the Force. And just like in Gotham, the people, citizens of Gotham, have light, but they also need their darkness. And the Organs are going to try to eliminate the darkness, but Batman won't let him. And meanwhile, we have the Joker, who last issue, the Joker was warned by Catwoman last issue, saying, "Hey, Joker, you're all about chaos, but these Organs, the Orgam family is all about control. The Orgam Queen, I can't believe you're not doing nothing, Joker. You're letting the Orgam Queen, who's obsessed with control, she wants to control everything, control the darkness, control everything, and you're going to let that go." Well, Joker isn't. So Joker's going to release his own agent of chaos, Duela Dent, Joker's daughter, onto Gotham, which I'm sure is going to further cause some chaos. I actually thought it was a little funny that the Joker put, ostensibly appeared to at first put a cat, Mr. Skittles the cat, into the microwave, Mr. and Mrs. Evenson, where Duela Dent was the neighbor to them, and the Joker talked about, go check to see what the Evensons are doing, and she ends, I don't know, somehow I wasn't really convinced that what the Joker did should make Duela Dent suddenly become insane again, but it is what it is. For all this build up to get to Joker's daughter, and to believe that Joker's daughter is just insane is going to play a major role in the resolution of this storyline, it just seems really kind of silly to me. This is, and then this false flag operation. The Orgams have created this shadow character. This shadow angel will execute Gotham's political elite every 3 hours, and will also apparently attack the Orgams. Even though the Orgams orchestrated it, they're trying to get the sympathy of the masses so that they could appear to be the heroes when they ultimately destroy, attack their own agent, the Shadow Angel. And so the Orgams have Shadow Angel attack the Orgams to generate sympathy and then propel themselves to further power. It's just more of this. It's just, where is this going? I just want it to end too. This is definitely one of the more frustrating issues. It's just dragged on too long. It's just straight on dragged on too long. And it wasn't saved by the backup, which is a backstory with Harvey Dent. I mean, it was a good story. It was a good story written by Alice Pacadell, art by Alessandro Esterin. But it was just, it was about Two-Face showing some compassion to one of his minions before he goes off to fight a war against the Orgams. Again, I'm a little bit, I just want this to end as well. But you want to talk more about the backup? Go ahead.
Yeah, there's no saving the issue. It is what it is. But at least the backup was entertaining.
Yeah.
And, I did appreciate seeing, kind of a different side to Two-Face, different side to Harvey Dent. And the Alessandro Esterin art, I mean, typically we've seen this art on the Sandman Nightmare County books is where Alessandro's been doing a lot of his work. So interesting to see them do some work here on more of a traditional superhero title. And then the only other thing I mentioned, those marbles that he holds out. Yeah, I think they worked on that or worked that out. Last issue or the previous issue where Batman worked something out where he said, yeah, I've come up with something that can disrupt the Asmir. So yeah, that's how he breaks through to Harvey. He's able to talk to him. So yeah, we've seen that in previous issues. But again, it's things like that you forget when the story drags on this long or it's not concise. So yeah. I'm just ready for a completely different tone and palette cleanser with Detective Comics. So, all right, up next, another one that we've been struggling with lately, The Flash number 10, written by Cy Spurrier, art by Ramon Perez and Vasco Gregev, colors by Matt Herms, letters by Hassan Otsman Elhau. So what I like to do with Flash, a lot of times I'm so curious whether this is landing for people, and maybe it's just me that's not getting it. So I always go to Comic Book Roundup whenever a new issue comes out, and I look at the scores because it gives me kind of a good idea of what people are thinking. And since the first issue, every subsequent issue, the overall aggregate score has gone down, and it's on a scale of 1 to 10. And I think the first issue got like 8 point something, 8.8 or 8.9 or something, which I just have a hard time believing. But it's steadily gone down to where I think 2 issues ago it was like 7.1. Last issue was 7.0. This is the first time this issue, or sorry, I guess it would have been last issue because this issue just came out, hasn't been reviewed yet. But last issue was the first time the score had gone up. It went back up to 7.9. So still not great, but it did turn around, if you will. Like first time that the trend stopped and it went back up. I think it'll head back down after this issue. That's not to say that this issue nothing happened. I think the reason last issue went the other direction was because Cy Spurrier started explaining some things. Plus, we had that really cool moment where we find out the Pilgrim is actually um,
Wade.
the youngest. Yeah, Wade West. So I think people probably enjoyed that, gave it a little bit of a bump in score, and yeah, he's starting to explain some things, and things are being explained here um, as well, with a little more clarity. So we see Barry fighting against, there was the big reveal last time. Oh, it's this crazy bat suit. Batman's in it, whatever. It's revealed that it's actually Green Arrow in the suit. There's a little editor's note that tells us that, hey, the issues take place after Green Arrow 13. We're going to talk about Green Arrow 13 in a little bit, but just to spoil that a little bit, Green Arrow 13, we see Wally. We know he's already agreed to help Amanda Waller, but we see him actually go in 13. We see him actually go and turn over the information from Sanctuary to Amanda Waller. And then with the way he's working with Waller in this issue, it becomes clear that apparently Green Arrow is going to be on the side of Amanda Waller during Absolute Power, which is sort of surprising in a lot of ways. So I do feel like the story is moving forward. However, it's moving forward at a snail's pace because the vast majority of this issue is this fight between Green Arrow and Barry Allen. Barry Allen not even realizing that he's fighting against Green Arrow, doesn't know who it is. So the actual Flash story with the arc angles and whatever, although it moves forward, we see Jay West actually make some progress. He's sort of figuring things out. He's starting to put the puzzle pieces together, figures out that somebody's manipulating reality to make it look like the speedsters are responsible for what's been going on, when in reality they haven't. They're not. They're being set up. So it's progress for that story, but it's minuscule progress because he does still have to get that information to Wally at some point. And Wally shows up for a few panels here and there in this issue. So again, we do sort of have some explanations and some sort of guideposts, if you will, on where Cy Spurrier is taking the story. It just doesn't happen to be very interesting in my mind. And like we've talked about from the beginning, you can sum it up like this: something's wrong with the Speed Force, as there has been throughout. We've seen that story before. So, and also the Mike Diodato art, I kind of complained about it being overly complicated, and they have switched, but the art really hasn't been very dynamic. So that hasn't really worked for me either. But anyway, what are your thoughts on it, Rocky?
Uh, I didn't enjoy the issue at all. I'm not a Green Arrow fan. I'm gonna part of my rant is going to be about when we get to Green Arrow, it's just how awful that issue is, and mind you, that's a little harsh. The Green Arrow issue, I don't. At least we get the rescue of Cheshire in that issue. I actually like the finding that was actually kind of cool. But that's because some of that issue of Green Arrow didn't actually star Green Arrow. But in this issue, we are told by way of an editor's note that Green Arrow ends up in this sort of like bat-looking suit. And he's battling Barry Allen. Why? We're never really told. But we can assume he's battling Barry Allen because, I don't know, does Amanda Waller want him to... take out Barry Allen, the Flash? Okay, why? At some point in Absolute Power, she's going to be removing the powers of all the heroes. Why attack Barry Allen now? And there's a whole slew of speedsters that are running around. Why is Barry Allen the focus? None of this is really ever explained. This is just a particularly, I think, a really bad issue. And we get more craziness from Cy Spurrier on the plot line here. Apparently, Jay West is able to figure out just by staring at a bunch of numbers. Now, Jay West is apparently a genius. I thought he had a connection to the Speed Force, but apparently he's like a super Einsteinian genius as well. He figures out that, well, the numbers are right, but the only reason that the numbers are right in all these complicated physical equation or science physics like equations is because reality is wrong. Well, how would a kid know that? If reality is wrong, you're not going to know about it because you're living this reality. But leaving that aside, what do I know? I'm just a reader, and you don't have to concern yourself with me. I'm just a reader. You don't have to make it make sense because you're the writer. So why make a story make sense to a reader, right? So whatever. So Jay somehow figures out that the arc angles lied and that the speedsters aren't causing all the problems with the Speed Force. Something else is. And so then upon this revelation, because apparently the archangels and all the rogues have been somehow spying on Jay and spying on everybody through means which are never explained to us, they say, I guess Jay now has finally figured out, Jay's figured everything out. Our time is almost up. And okay. And then Barry Allen defeats Green Arrow, who's in the bat suit. Only to all of a sudden have the Crown of Thrones show up, the Crown of Thrones wants to beat up Barry Allen at the end, and that's it there. I'm going to defend myself here because you can tell by the tone of which I am saying this that I've sort of reached my wit's end on this. I have in past issues taken copious notes, tried to put things together, been as flattering and as complimentary as I can, and I did all that. And this was one week where we had a lot to read. And frankly, I just got sick of it and fed up. I just get tired of it. I get tired of having to feel like I'm doing a book report, trying to make sense of this. And the break we got with this issue of The Flash is that we got Green Arrow showing up and we got a long projected fight scene, and we got Jay somehow figuring out that reality is wrong. The numbers are right, but reality is wrong, and that the archangels have lied, and that the speedsters are not the fault of not what's causing the problems with the Speed Force. And okay. That's all well and good. So I guess a little bit of clarity there. But this is a prime example of the journey getting to the destination. The journey has been an abject disaster. The journey has been horrible. The journey has been unnecessary confusion to the reader. The journey has been such that none of the characters share their knowledge with the readers. All the characters seem confused, and when they're not confused, or when the characters have appeared to know what they're doing, when Wally has appeared to know what he's doing, when Barry has appeared not to be under the influence of something, when anybody has appeared to know what they're doing, they don't explain what the hell's going on to the reader. It's just been a mess. It's been terribly put together, terribly paced. The art has been all over the place. It hasn't been consistent. And I say again, there's no matter how good you are as an artist, you can't make a bad story you can make a bad story look good, but you can't make it make sense. And that's the problem with this entire series. And definite pass on me. You don't need to read Green Arrow 13 this week, guys. If you're into Absolute Power, you don't need to read Green Arrow. You don't need to read Flash. Don't waste your time. It's absolutely unnecessary. Absolutely unnecessary in my opinion. But if you're a completionist, by all means, dive right in. But for $3.99 American each issue, there are better ways to spend spend your money this week.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree on Flash. I would never recommend anybody to pick this up. Green Arrow, yeah, it's a little tougher call on whether or not you should check out Green Arrow, but we'll get there. We'll talk about it when we get there. So, all right, let's move on. It's just, we haven't been a fan of this Flash run since the beginning, and this detour in Absolute Power is not doing it any favors. But that being said, if it was all focused on the regular story, I don't know that it would be any better. So, yeah, it's just unfortunate. So, anyway, up next we have Absolute Power Ground Zero #1, which is sort of the prelude leading into the first issue of the big event that kicks off next week. Three stories in this one. The first one, stage one, co-written by Nicole Maines and Mark Waid. Had a chance to talk to Mark Waid about all things Absolute Power. That episode's out now. Go check it out on the Comic Source YouTube channel or Comic Source podcast feed. I specifically asked him about collaborating with Nicole, and he had some interesting things to say. So go and check that out. So yeah, him and Nicole on this story, with sharing the writing duties. Skylar Patridge does the art. Patricio Del Pesce on colors. Steve Wands on letters. And it's basically Rocky's favorite pink-haired character, Jay Nakamura and Dreamer in that first story. Second story might be my favorite. We get the return of John Starr, who's an old school DC character from way back. Friend of the show, V. Ken Marion on art. Mark Waid co-writes this one along with Chip Zdarsky, which makes sense because there's a little bit of a tie-in to Failsafe. Patricio Del Pesce also handles the colors on this, and then Steve Wands on the letters. And then the last story basically explains how Amanda Waller gets her hands on the Brainiac Queen, how the Brainiac Queen becomes part of this trinity of evil, as DC's calling it. So Joshua Williamson writes this one. Gleb Melnikoff handles the art and the colors with Steve Wands on letters. And I thought the Gleb Melnikoff art was really, really strong. So anyway, give us your thoughts on the first story, Rocky.
I want to be clear. This is a positive review. I think Absolute Power, Ground Zero. I think this is starting off. This is a good setup, and it's been hit and miss. I say leading up to this, in my opinion. But I think that this is accessible. I think this is an accessible issue. You don't need to read a lot. You can just read Absolute Power, Ground Zero, and you can sort of hit the ground running and get the gist of it. Essentially, this entire issue is just a setup by showing how Amanda Power acquires the team, the big guns of her team, of which she will move forward and pursue absolute power, the title of the entire series. And the first thing she does, and this is done in 3 stages, stage 1, 2, and 3, and that's how each of these stories is told. What I'll do is I'll talk about the first stage first, and then I'll invite you to comment, Jace, and then we can go through the different stages, which is 3 individual stories. Stage 1 is Amanda Waller is taking over the island nation of Gamora, and this is Nicole Maines and Mark Waid write it. Skylar Patridge's art is I didn't mind it. Finally, Jay Nakamura has something happen to him that I actually agree with, and that is he gets shot. Unfortunately, it's only in the ankle, and so he's still alive. But his mother dies, so we can feel sorry for him. And his mother is the president of Gamora. And Jay Nakamura here is, he's captured by Deadeye. And he's captured by Amanda Waller. And unfortunately, Dreamer, he believes that Dreamer's on her side because in the Adventures of Superman story arc, it was Dreamer and his boyfriend, John Kent, Superman, who actually helped save the island nation of Gamora. But here, unfortunately, Dreamer is being blackmailed by Amanda Waller. We know that because of the of that 4-issue Suicide Squad Dream Team series that Nicole Maines wrote that you and I both reviewed, and we both enjoyed it. Dreamer's parents are being held essentially at ransom. If Dreamer doesn't do what she's told, her parents will be killed by Amanda Waller, and so she's got no choice but to help capture Jay Nakamura, and that's exactly what she does. And he's basically held in prison. And that's it. And so that's really the first story. It is a little bit, of all the 3 stories, it's necessary setup. It's boring. I wouldn't have put that as my first one, quite frankly. But so I fear that people who are just picking this up off the rack and perusing through that first story, I think that they're going to be put off by it because they're not going to see a single character. They're not going to see Superman, Batman, or Wonder Woman who are on the cover. They're not going to really see any familiar characters, quite frankly, or characters that they would associate with this big event. They're going to see Jay Nakamura and Dreamer. Hopefully they'll stick with it because it gets far, far better in stages 2 and 3. And but before we get to that, you want to talk about stage 1, that story?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't find it particularly boring, but I take your point. Because there's plenty of action in it, but yeah, it's not starting off with exactly the sort of the big guns. Um, Whereas the other two focus on how the Trinity of Evil comes together. So it is kind of interesting. But I think the reason they put it first is because it does explain a lot. So how does Amanda consolidate her base of power? It is the tie-in from the Suicide Squad Dream Team story that you mentioned that we both read and enjoyed and liked. Um, it that's sort of the prelude to this, if you will, the prelude to the prelude, which explains um, why she wants Gamora. Talks about building the facility that she's building there to house all these superhumans that she's potentially going to be capturing and what have you. Um, and the other thing it does is it explains for anybody who doesn't understand. Well, isn't Dreamer supposed to be a hero? Why would Dreamer be helping Amanda Waller? Why is Dreamer on Amanda Waller's team? It answers that question as well. We know that yes, Amanda has not only does Amanda Waller have Dreamer's parents held hostage, but Dreamer's parents, literal heartbeat is tied into Amanda Waller's heartbeat. So if Amanda Waller's heart stops beating, her parents' hearts stop beating. Um, again, something that we saw at the end of Suicide Squad Dream Team. So I understand why they put it first. I don't disagree with you though that it might have been better served as the last story. Because if somebody sticks with it, they're going to get the information they need. I mean, I don't see somebody spending $4 on a comic and then just reading the first two stories and not reading the last one. I it's funny. I'm not the biggest Jay Nakamura fan, but I feel like I the position you put me in is to be like this Jay Nakamura apologist, right? Like
Defender.
he's not an awful character. I'm
I
not
don't know.
happy he got shot. Poor guy
I'm kind of
lost his
being a jerk.
mother.
I'm being a jerk. I admit that. I want Saturn Girl to be a Superboy. I just, he's like the friend. I just don't want him to hang around John Kent. I want Saturn Girl too. That's it. I'm just being a dick.
Yeah. So uh yeah. Poor Jay. I feel bad. Um I wonder if he didn't have pink hair, if Rocky might not dislike him less. Um, but the way, I mean, the Legion of Superheroes has pretty much been forgotten by DC since Bendis left, which, in a way, the things that Bendis did with them weren't really successful. So it's not a bad thing that they've been forgotten in my mind. Um, but yeah, sorry that Saturn Girl and John Kent aren't getting together anytime soon.
Yeah.
I don't think that relationship works anyway beyond the obvious of them being separated by centuries and centuries of time. Not that John Kent can't go to the future or what have you, but to me, it's Saturn Girl and Lightning Lad. Always will be. Like
Yeah.
they're the couple. So yeah. So anyway, stage two, I guess.
Sure. Well, stage two, this was my favorite part of the story as well, and I understand it's yours as well. This is written by Chip Zdarsky and Mark Waid, Vikan Marian on the art. I really love the art here. I'm trying. I actually Googled. I actually had to Google John Starr, Time Commander. I had to be reminded. Apparently, he was in Batman: Brave and the Bold, issue 23. I don't recall that, but in any event, he's actually somebody that struggles with mental illness, apparently, according to Wikipedia, and a whole slew of other things. He's been definitely a bad guy in the past. He's been definitely a villain in the past, but he's apparently Batman at one time considered him to be extremely brilliant, on par with his knowledge of time travel was on par with Rip Hunter. And in any event, that's why Amanda Waller wants him, because she wants to use John Starr, the Time Commander, to help repair the equipment, the body of Failsafe, because apparently he's got the ability to. He can create sort of a time lantern. He's got a lantern that it's like a chronal rewind button that it can reverse broken objects to their unbroken state. And because failsafe is obviously broken back to its original programming, it's no longer possessed by Zur. It's essentially, for all intents and purposes, it's essentially dead. Well, Amanda Waller wants the Time Commander to resurrect Failsafe, and ironically enough, she actually used that same sort of like lantern to resurrect John Starr himself. So when it talks about reversing broken objects to the unbroken state, it potentially can also resurrect people who have died because it resurrects John Starr. So it's an interesting bit of tech. It's very curious here. One of the things that we all have to keep in mind moving forward is that Amanda Waller has spent, presumably, I'm going to make up a number. I'm going to guess at least the last 5 to 10 years of DC continuity time probably are amassing all kinds of different technologies and data about the Speed Force, about the various forces, about the multiverse, and acquiring and learning things about magic and the future and time travel and everything. And with respect to her knowledge of time travel, I love how Mark Waid and Chip Zdarsky use that to show how John Starr thinks he's getting one up on Amanda Waller by traveling back in time to try to, because he doesn't want to help Amanda Waller. He knows she's got a reputation. He's aware of it. But Amanda Waller is literally 5 steps ahead of him and doesn't allow him, has set things up. So no matter how much he tries to manipulate time to his benefit to outwit Waller, she's ahead of him. And it's really not surprising, but I thought it was really well done. And ultimately, he's forced to reinstate, to basically resurrect Failsafe, and that's exactly what happens. I thought it was very well done, well written, and it was actually, I thought it was fast-paced and action-packed. And with Mark Waid, I always like Mark Waid. He's always good at concisely describing a plot. Take notes, Cy Spurrier. He's done a really good job, and my favorite of the issue. So what are your comments on it?
Yeah, I thought the art was really strong. Great to see John Starr again. I think he's an interesting character. I'm always a little reluctant when you start adding time travel to a story, just because it opens up a whole can of worms. But it does seem like Wade's aware of that and he's being careful. Again, going back to referencing my conversation I had with Wade, although we heard in Batman 149 that the body was missing of Failsafe, and we see here in this issue how he's Failsafe is sort of, like you said, brought back to zero, if you will, brought back to his default state. Mm-hmm. Remains to be seen how exactly Amanda Waller talks him into working with her and what have you. So there's still a little bit of the story that's to be determined. Because one of the other things that I asked Mark when I talked to him, I'm giving so much away here. You guys won't even have to go watch the interview. There's tons more there, believe me. One of the most interesting things, just to go off on a tangent here real quick, was I asked him what the DC universe looks like on the other side of absolute power. That was really interesting to hear, as well as his opinions on why Amanda's doing what she's doing. But anyway, one of the things I did ask him was how all these fit together. Will we get the story of how Amanda and Failsafe start to work together? The stage 3 that we're about to talk about really explains how the Brainiac Queen and Waller get together and why the Brainiac Queen would be on Waller's side. We don't really understand or know why Failsafe would work with Amanda Waller. But that is something that's going to be explained at some point in the event. Because I did ask, when you go and look at that free comic book day story, seems like maybe it takes place after these stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. So I did ask Mark, like, kind of how they all fit together. And he basically said they all happen around the same time. So I would take that to mean you have these 3 stories that we're talking about here in this Absolute Power Ground Zero. And then probably immediately after these 3, or soon thereafter of these 3, at least this is my headcanon, then the events of that free comic book day happen. And then we move into the events of issue 1 for Absolute Power. But I'm sure we're going to have some flashbacks throughout the story to kind of explain some of the things, fill in some of the holes. Like I said, like why does Failsafe agree to work with Amanda Waller, what have you. So I just want to point that out. Again, go listen to my chat with Mark. It's really worth your time. So anyway, stage 3.
I quite enjoyed stage 3. It wasn't my favorite, but it was absolutely necessary. And I thought I think it's very brilliantly done, and it works so well in conjunction with Superman issue 15. And since we're reviewing Superman issue 15 coming up here, I'm going to give a little bit of a spoiler alert. I mean, at the end of Superman 15, at the end of the war against Brainiac, you know, I love the synchronicity between what Brainiac does and Superman's origin. You know, Brainiac is destroyed, his ship is destroyed in space, and he sort of rockets his lone creation to Earth, and that's the Brainiac Queen. Sort of like his last dying wish is to protect his creation. You know, like Jor-El with Kal-El. You know, and then Brainiac Queen lands on Earth, and instead of being raised by a farmer's family, this Brainiac Queen is a blank slate. She's has no memory, no nothing. The AI's been wiped out, and what becomes apparent is that Amanda Waller fills in the gaps. Amanda Waller is like the Jonathan and Martha Kent. It's the authority figure, the wonderful, great parenting skills of Amanda Waller raise the Brainiac Queen over a period of 20 years, which are actually only 20 hours in real time, but 20 years in the mind of the Brainiac Queen. She is manipulated by Waller through a course of over 20 years to have a hatred and a resentment of superheroes and see everything wrong with superheroes. And while only 20 years have passed for Amanda Waller, and in the real world, in the computer mind of the Brainiac Queen, she has been raised to resent heroes, and she's become extremely powerful. So even though she's a blank slate when she arrives, I just love the idea that Amanda Waller now, it's an open question. We've got some gaps filled in as to what the motivations of Amanda Waller are in terms of her motivations to, you know, we always knew she was a control freak, but now she's evolved into resenting all superheroes. Why is that? We're going to find out more about that, I think, as an absolute power it moves forward in terms of Amanda Waller's motivations. But it's very interesting that Amanda Waller's under a lot of pressure. We already know that for a long period of time she wasn't sleeping because she never got a lot of sleep because of dream. She was afraid Dreamer was going to infect her mind. And now Amanda Waller stayed up 20 straight hours trying to essentially be a mother and father figure to the Brainiac Queen. And but you know, how do you? One has to wonder, like, the Wall. She's Amanda Waller's called nickname. Her nickname is the Wall. But emotionally, she's kind of a wall too. No emotions seem to be able to pierce Amanda Waller very often, anyway. And it's, you know, even with the Brainiac Queen, did she feel anything? I mean, even Brainiac felt something for his creation. He's all robotic, 12th level intellect, and Lex feels something for Lena Luthor, his daughter, and then Amanda Waller. What was the extent of Amanda Waller's loss that led her to this? And does she feel anything genuine toward the Brainiac Queen that she's raised for 20 years? I thought it was very well done, and in such a short period of time. So actually, the more I'm talking about it, it may compete with the second story. I thought it was very, very well done. And I mean, all three combined, we get at the end of this issue with Absolute Power Ground Zero with a really great setup for Failsafe and the Brainiac Queen. And I think it works really well. So this was third story was really good as well. A really great setup. What do you think?
Yeah, completely necessary for sure. To explain, like I said, how the Brainiac Queen, you know, why would the Brainiac Queen agree to work with Amanda Waller? Well, yeah, completely manipulated, despicable, and shame on you for ever in any way, shape, or form comparing Amanda Waller to John and Martha Kent. No. Like, I get what you're saying, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's the analog and comparing,
It's a twisted
Superman
version,
being
yeah.
Earth found by them, John and Martha. Here it is, Brainiac Queen sent to Earth, found by Amanda Waller. And yes, in that way, they're the same. In no other way, shape, or form, morally, or anything, are they, or ethically, are they the same at all? Amanda Waller is a walking, living, breathing piece of shit. She's absolutely despicable. She's disgusting. She's horrible. She's a character you love to hate, and she's deserving of being reviled and hated and despised. She's earned every bit of that. Absolutely.
Tell us how you really feel, Chase.
She's earned that. She's earned that over decades of doing absolutely abhorrent things like this. right? Like bad enough that this creature was created by Brainiac, who, you're not wrong in saying that, when we were talking about Action Comics, and it seems like what Joshua Williamson was hinting at, or was having Brainiac hint at, was, what's missing. Yeah, it turns out what's missing is family, because you ostracized yourself, you divorced yourself from, your family and emotion and whatever, and now all of a sudden there's, a glitch, as you've called it, because you feel like something, you feel the end coming, the end, you're not immortal, you're not going to live forever. What's your legacy? What are you leaving behind? And all of a sudden you feel like there's something missing, and it's caused this glitch. And what's intimated by Williamson and context of the story is, yes, he's missing a family, right? So he tries to create legacy, he tries to create family. You can look at this Brainiac Queen as an offspring. And again, you'll see what happens. It's no spoiler to say the Superman family wins the day at the end of the day in House of Brainiac. We'll talk about how that happens. But it's so interesting that you can draw another parallel, right, with this Brainiac Queen. Maybe this Brainiac Queen, maybe this creation of Brainiac is not doomed to repeat the failures of her father, or her creator, for lack of a better term. She's not going to be cold and emotionless and just consumed with the thirst for knowledge, if she can have what Superman had. If she can be found by a John and Martha Kent and be nurtured. Instead, she's found by arguably the worst person on planet Earth in the DC universe, Amanda Waller. And Amanda does absolutely everything in her power to manipulate psychologically and emotionally this being, so that Amanda can use her. And so bad enough, right? Bad enough that this sentient being is perverted and corrupted, possibly beyond repair, by Amanda Waller. But, on top of that, Amanda purports to care about the Brainiac Queen, talks to the Brainiac Queen as if she's, Amanda's daughter. In a way, you could look at this. This could have been a chance for Amanda to actually have some redemption. We're going to see, and Rocky kind of mentioned it, we're going to see some of the motivations, or have some of the motivations explored. Mark Waid talks about it in the interview as well, in the Amanda Waller Origins series that we're getting from John Ridley. And I told Mark, if anybody can make me understand why Amanda does what she does, it'll be John Ridley. I'll never say it's okay. I'll never agree. And the level of empathy that I might feel, probably going to be pretty low, because I just think Amanda Waller is just an absolutely abhorrent individual. But that being said, not only could this have been a chance for the Brainiac Queen to not follow the path of her creator, it could have been a chance for maybe Amanda Waller to have some redemption. Hey, you lost your child, but here's a surrogate in a way. But you're too far gone, Amanda. You're too far gone, and you're so stuck with your head up your own ass about, I got to control all superheroes and make sure they have no power. You don't even realize that. And instead, you take this sentient being and you manipulate it psychologically and emotionally to hate superheroes and to be on your side and be loyal to you, and whatever. Like, how awful. Like, what a horrible thing to do to another sentient being. You've absolutely erased any chance for this Brainiac Queen to have anything but like horrible life ahead of it. Like, it's absolutely just despicable behavior. But what we've come to expect from Amanda Waller, a character that we absolutely love to hate. And it's interesting because we've talked about how she's a divisive figure, and some people call us out in the comments and say we're too hard on her, or whatever. I do. If anything can come out of this Absolute Power event, it's going to be this. Like, DC is holding nothing back in saying that Amanda Waller is the villain of the DCU. Maybe on par, not in physical power or power that she herself wields with Darkseid, but certainly like on that level of evilness. That the capability to just be an absolutely despicable entity and to affect change. Now, I don't necessarily agree with it. It does stretch um, verisimilitude a little bit, like Rocky's favorite word, that she could amass the power that she amasses and what have you. But, as I'm often fond of saying, we got to take what DC editorial tells us is happening. We got to take that as the truth. This is what's happening. And we'll talk about it more next week when we talk about Absolute Power #1. But it is, I guess we're to believe that she has been putting all these things in place over, years and years and years, that she's able to wield this much power. But, we've also talked about her as a plot device a lot of times because she does seem to have the superpower of knowing everything. She's omniscient, which doesn't necessarily feel like a real thing. But I did enjoy the story. I thought the art was fantastic. It's definitely necessary. But as much as I enjoyed the story because it explains and puts in the pieces into place, I do not enjoy watching Amanda Waller do this. I think it's just like, I'm not a proponent of the death penalty at all. You're over there happy that Jade Nakamura got shot. I would be happy to see Amanda Waller killed, right? Like,
Oh, for sure.
was it? I can't remember was it Suicide Squad kills a man? Like, there was some Black Label 3-issue series where Amanda Waller got killed. Man, did that bring a smile to my face?
Yeah, yeah. I remember. I think it was the Joker that killed her with
Yeah,
wasn't it?
yeah,
With the yeah.
yeah. It
One
was.
one shout out. I just want to give a shout out to the Time Commander. Was actually created by Bob Haney and Ramona Fradden. And Ramona Fradden, she passed recently, but I think it's a nice call out to see one of Ramona's characters that she co-created in this series. So I thought that's a nice. I don't know if that was by design, but it was a nice coincidence. I think, and a nice tribute.
Yeah, definitely. And that Viken Marion art, man, he's so fantastic. He was on the show recently. Viken was talking about his Kickstarter for Soul Striker.
Yeah.
Kickstarter's over, but there's a secondary campaign going on Indiegogo. If you're so inclined, go check it out if you really dug that art in that second story. Okay, up next we have Primer Part 4. Again, this was the Primer YA story that was very well received critically and by fans. That DC released in the format of the individual issues, split it up into 4. It's written by Jennifer Murrow and Thomas Krajewski. Art is by Gretel Lusky. Letters by Wes Abbott. The follow-up is coming out next week. So we'll be talking about Primer. I think it's Clash of Colors or something like that.
Clashing Colors. Clashing Colors.
Yeah, Clash of Colors. Yeah, so that's coming out as a follow-up really soon. So looking forward to that. But that being said, I've talked multiple times about how my daughter tried to get me to read this. I just didn't make the time for it. Man, this is just such a fun story. This is exactly the kind of story that can fire the imagination of a young reader and get them to read comics, to fall in love with these characters. It's easy to understand. And the whole idea is that Primer's foster parents, her mother works in a lab. Her father is an artist. So brings in the whole idea of paint, whatever. But anyway, the lab that her mother worked at created these paints that are in these little tubes, and they self-regenerate after a while. But each different color of paint gives a different superpower, and you can use up to 3 combined at any one time. And they even did this fantastic, which looked like it was handwritten in Primer's handwriting, this little chart that showed what all the powers did. And again, those kind of things that will really fire the imagination, will really inspire kids, and they'll pretend to be Primer. I'm using this color and this color and this color, and it allows me to do this kind of thing. And they'll make up their own stories and just have a lot of fun. This is exactly that kind of book. Is it groundbreaking in its characterization? No. Is it groundbreaking with, plot twists and surprises? No. In this particular issue, in the finale here, Primer does find a way to to win the day, even though at the beginning, she goes up against this military guy who was also working at the lab that her mother worked. Um, his name is Strack, and he wants the paints for himself. And yeah, it's fun. The art is fantastic. It's young and it's fresh and brightly colored as it should be. Again, to really appeal to young readers. And even though Strack temporarily defeats Primer, she is able to have one of the paints that she uses to sort of trick Strack and like I said, eventually win the day and rescue her foster parents. And it seems like her foster parents agree that she should continue as Primer and continue her fledgling career as a superhero. So again, nothing groundbreaking, nothing that's like, oh my god, I've never seen that before, what have you, but just a solidly paced comic with easy to read dialogue, easy to understand characters, gorgeous art with some really fun ideas that sort of transcend just what a younger reader would understand. Like this whole idea of the paints and mixing them together to have be able to use any three of the distinct powers at one time. That's just really fun. And the art is great. And again, I love this. Like my daughter was so dead on that this is absolutely fantastic. And you can believe she's be reading the next installment, The Clashing Colors, as well, because at the end of this one, it does say, check out Ashley's new adventures in Primer Clashing Colors on sale next month. It's actually next week. I'm pretty sure it's next week. Obviously, at the end of the graphic novel that came out when this was all in one, it didn't have that because they were still working. And actually, Clashing Colors was actually supposed to come out last year, but I don't know. They must have had some sort of production delay, or maybe the art took longer than they thought, or what have you. But yeah, did not disappoint. And now that I've read all four, and I actually went through and read them all, but I'm probably going to read it again. This is a story that's infinitely rereadable because it's just so much fun, and it's easy. It's an easy read, which again helps for younger readers who may not be the strongest. But that is also a good thing, right? Like getting your kids to read anything is a good thing. And so something easy to read like this, where they can read it multiple times, and it strengthens their reading skills, and they can move on to bigger and better. So I absolutely love this, like highest possible recommendation.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on it?
I thought that this possessed, there's my favorite word again, verisimilitude. And I thought, I'm going to give it a higher compliment than even you did, because I would say that the fight scene in this issue is better written than 90% of the fight is on par or better than 90% of what I read in your average comic book. That's how well this was done. Because one of the things that I thought, here's what happens if you tell me that somebody's going to, if you're telling me that I'm reading a comic book for kids and there's a fight scene in it and a kid fights an adult, I'm going to be predisposed to believe, even after all my years of reading comics, that the fight scene is going to be contrived, it's going to be ridiculous, blah, blah. No, not so here. First of all, this has never felt like I'm reading a kid's comic. This actually feels like, I believe that this kid, this teenager, I believe her emotions, emotionally, her character-wise. I believe she's got insecurities. She's a foster kid. She's got some insecurities about whether her new foster parents love her, or she feels she might disappoint them. She's got her own insecurities. They've got their own issues. But the mother, has created these paints, and she's very good at using these paints. Primer is very creative. Primer, her real name is Ashley. She's very good at using 3 colors at a time, and each power is a superpower. When she confronts the soldier here, this Strack character, and the Strack character actually had in his possession 32 of the 33 paints. And she only has one. She possessed the teleportation paint. And I thought, how is she going to defeat him? And she so brilliantly, because Strack was so overconfident, he had 3 paints on his body, she just basically shot him with her paint. And because if you have if you're using more than 3 paints, there's a short circuit. And she pushed him away and managed to win one of the battles just by being smart. and it worked, and it was believable. And then when grows in heights, and I'm thinking like, oh my God, now she's really screwed. Well, she's not, because he uses psychological warfare on her. He assumes the image of her father, who's in prison. That forces her to use her one of her powers, strength, and she knocks him out. This is believable. This was all the actions here were as a direct result of good character work. The fight scene was premised and was well established. It had believable endings. It wasn't contrived. It wasn't just luck. It wasn't forcing A, B, C, D to happen so that she could win. No, this was actually, it made sense given what we knew of the power base, the power set, the paints. This is why I love this as an adult. And I know I know all ages would love this, and especially if you're younger, because this is adult storytelling that kids can enjoy. And, again, another great compliment. I'm absolutely in on this. I want Primer to be a mainstream character in the mainstream DC universe. She would be the best new addition to the mainstream DC universe, because what a wonderfully creative new character, and the power set with those paints is so awesome. I'm really curious, by the way, at the end she gets a costume, so how great can that be? We finally get to the end and we see her new costume. I don't know how her costume works. It kind of, but I'm assuming somehow the costume must allow her to have control. I think the paints are on her belt, her utility belt, and how she can maybe access parts of her paint on her utility. I'm not sure, but I'm really looking forward to seeing how that works, because the general of the army actually built her a superhero suit at the end. And again, believable, and I don't know, it's quite enjoyable, and I can see why your daughter enjoys it so much.
Yeah, I sort of agree with you that it'd be great to see her in the mainstream DCU, but then at the same time, I kind of don't, because I worry that they'll have to make her more serious, and I think she works where she's at really, really well. Um, yeah, I'd just be
That's a good
careful.
point. That's a good point.
I'd hate for her to lose her charm by coming to the main DCU, but who knows? Okay, up next we have Harley Quinn, number 41, written by Tinny Howard, Sweeney Boo on art and colors, Steve Wands on the letters. Enjoy this. What I don't enjoy, and it's unfortunately almost a hallmark of Tinny's work at this point, is just a lack of consistency in pacing and story. The Sweeney Boo art, absolutely fantastic. Love it when she's on this title. Brings kind of a unique feel, kind of a younger feel a little bit. We know that Harley has been working on trying to help other superheroes and any sort of psychological issues that they're having. And then she was captured by, some sergeant or what have you from the Gotham City Police Department in the last issue. So basically what happens here is we find out that this police officer wants the Bat family, and she's basically blackmailing Harley to wear a wire, to wear a tracker, to go out there and try to get information on the Bat family. This officer is going to, wants to know all their secret identities, wants to expose them, wants to be able to exploit them for her, her own nefarious means or what have you. So Harley does do as she's told. She doesn't really have a choice, but she walks around the rest of the issue sort of holding this placard, if you will, to basically say, yeah, I'm going to do what you say, in terms of the police officer can hear what Harley's saying, and Harley's saying all the right things, but then she holds a sign to let whomever she's talking to know, hey, I'm actually not doing what this police officer wants. I'm doing my own thing, if you will. So she's trying to do the best she can to convince the police officer that she's doing the things she's supposed to do without actually doing the things she's supposed to do. So it's kind of interesting. It's kind of fun. But it's going to be one of those things where I'm not going to know how successful it is until basically we we have the end of the story, which which does happen at times. And it's okay to not be 100% in on a story until uh, or to be able to say how successful a story is going to be until um, until everything is all said and done. So that's kind of what we're going to have to wait for in my mind to see if it works as well as it could. So that's kind of where we are. But again, the Sweeney Boo art, absolutely fantastic. Just love it. The color work she does as well is really great. It's just too bad that we can't get a more consistent feel in pacing and characterization. This whole Harley Quinn run from Tini Howard has just been a little bit up and down in my mind. So anyway, what were your thoughts on it?
I don't have much to add. I just skim read it. It's just not for me, and I'll just leave it at that. I don't know enough about the plot line to care about reading it. I only skim read it. It's not my cup of tea. I like Sweeney Boo. But it just doesn't feel like something. This feels like so completely disconnected from the DC universe, and how tragic. I mean, the lost opportunity to tie in Harley Quinn to make her actually useful in the Absolute Power story. But of course, there's no way you can make. I mean, that wasn't obviously on Tini Howard's radar, and that probably maybe she wasn't even told to bother to do that. But I mean, she's coming off this title. She's coming off Catwoman, coming into September, and I think. Well, for me, I mean, I'm looking forward to. I think Harley Quinn and both Harley Quinn and Catwoman are going to go on hiatus for a while, and I think that's a good thing. I think that's what we need. Maybe just sit back, and sometimes absence makes the heart grow fonder. Because right now, their presence isn't exactly pulling me in too much.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, up next, Superman 15, final chapter of House of Brainiac, Part 6. Writers Joshua Williamson, art by Rafa Sandoval, colors by Alejandro Sanchez, letters by Ariana Mayer. So give us your thoughts on the conclusion. I have a feeling we may slightly disagree on this issue, but we'll see.
I enjoyed this issue. I thought it was really, I thought it was relatively well done. First I want to give a shout out. I really like the cover. I think that's Sandoval on the cover. And I really like it. It's really good. It has a big image of just Superman's face, and it's all grimaced, and all the, instead of blood and all the cracks on his face, it's all like computer code, like zeros and ones and numbers, and it's just really well done, because throughout the entire issue, Superman is only slowly regaining his powers, because at the end of Action, in the middle of Action Comics last issue, in the previous chapter of the House of Brainiac Part 5, Lobo had freed Superman and the Superman family, and this issue is just a drawn-out battle sequence against Brainiac, and really an ongoing discussion between, as Superman and Brainiac are fighting, it becomes apparent that Brainiac sort of explains his well, sort of hints at his motivations, but he can't bring himself to admit that it's really not true knowledge that he's looking for, although it kind of is, because he created the Brainiac Queen to absorb all this knowledge, and then Lena Luthor could absorb all this knowledge, and he wants family, but Brainiac doesn't know how to really. Brainiac is completely inaccessible to his emotions, and the tragedy of this is. It's only at the end, when Brainiac is defeated and his ship is dying, that he's slowly losing his intelligence, because Luthor is basically winning the war and absorbing the data away from Brainiac, and instead of Lena Luthor absorbing with her beyond 12th level intellect, but instead of Lena Luthor absorbing all that intelligence and all that knowledge, it's actually Lex Luthor's mind doing it. And as Brainiac is slowly having his intelligence siphoned away from him at the end of this issue, but as he loses his intelligence, Brainiac gains more and more emotions, and he can't handle it. He doesn't know how to process it, and it's sort of like the tragedy of Brainiac. And the irony, I think, is that it's really his need and desire for emotions was the void that Brainiac felt. But Brainiac wrongfully, in my opinion, my read of the story anyway, is that he thought that void was because he needed to fill that void with knowledge, but he didn't. He really needed to fill that void with love and compassion, maybe, and friendship and family, and he never had that. But then, of course, his final act is to, as the ship is destroyed, he sends out that ship containing the Brainiac Queen that is ultimately discovered by Amanda Waller in the opening in the second stage 2 of Absolute Power that we just reviewed. So I thought it was really well done. But, full props to Williamson, because there's a lot more that went on here, man. There's a lot of substance in this issue. And I got to tell you, Brainiac is dying, Brainiac says some very interesting things to Superman. He warns Superman about the Source Store, the Great Healing, the Millionth World, and something called the Crisis Gauntlet. Forget about the Infinity Gauntlet if you're a Marvel zombie. In DC, we might have in the future the Crisis Gauntlet, because what else would you call it in the DC universe if you had a gauntlet? So some hints as to future storylines there that Brainiac becomes aware of as he loses all his knowledge. He shares some of it before it disappears with Superman. We also have the formation of a brand new world, because with the help of Lobo, all of these cities are the shrunken cities are gathered by Lobo, and a new planet is created called Colo 2, and it's sort of a melting pot of a bunch of different cultures, which is likely going to lead to some disaster because there's a lot of different cultures that emerged. There's a pretty good high five between Superman and Lobo, because Lobo doesn't seem too upset that all the Zarnians were wiped out. He doesn't seem, I guess Lobo, I mean, it's funny when you talk about all the themes here and about family and everything else. Lobo lost his entire world, and it's water off a duck's back to Lobo, and he's basically, fist pumping Superman. Last sons forever, right? I mean, it's kind of comical, but that's Lobo for you. Interesting twist as well. The cost to Lex Luthor is that Lex Luthor apparently loses his memory. He has amnesia at the end of all this, the effects of absorbing all that knowledge. And finally, on the last page, we have what appears to be a teaser for an October event, which will involve Doomsday, and it shows Doomsday's fist slamming against the walls of hell. Doomsday, who is the king of hell, is breaking out of hell, and we know that because of past storylines dealing with Martian Manhunter and Supergirl and the Blood, a new character who's part of hell. I can't remember his name, Blood Axe, or anyways. But Doomsday is breaking out of hell, and so that's going to be coming up. So a lot of teasers here of a lot of substance in this issue, a lot of teasers, a lot of things to chew on, leading into Absolute Power and what may lie beyond Absolute Power. So I'm curious. I love this issue. It's one of my candidates for pick of the week, actually. So I'm curious as to know your thoughts.
Yeah, I thought it was really good as well. The thing I thought we were going to disagree on, you mentioned earlier that you thought it maybe wrapped up a little too quickly, or conveniently. I can't remember exactly what you said, but that was going to be the thing that I was like, nah, I didn't think that at all. Like I appreciated that Williamson took the time after to sort of fill in the blanks on a lot of the things that we don't necessarily normally get with events like this. We did talk a little bit about it when we were covering Batman 149, and you were like, I don't really care what happens to the clone. It doesn't matter, what have you, that sort of thing, which I thought was kind of interesting because, at the end of the day, if there is a loose end or something that's not tied up, we end up saying, oh man, well, what about this? They never talked about this or that or the other thing. So I did appreciate that, we find out about the bottled city. I can't imagine that Colo 2 is going to really be a place you want to visit, like all those disparate cultures or whatever. I mean, I don't know, maybe it'll end up working out really, really well, but it seems to me that it might not, that might be actually the opposite of what might happen, but I'm not really sure. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it goes into what I was saying before about how this just felt like such a classic Superman event, how it just feels like it really worked on a lot of levels. And I really appreciated what Williamson was able to do. We've talked multiple times about how it really is the lack of family more than anything else that makes it seem like that's what Brainiac was missing. That's what caused the glitch. That's what he, the thing that he was not able to have in his life that he needed, I guess. Um, you could make the argument that's a pretty big departure from what we've seen um, from Brainiac in the past, I guess. But I mean, for me, I think it works. I think it actually makes a lot of sense. Is it the most original idea in the world? No. Taking this super intelligent being, and them wanting to suppress emotions or what have you. I mean, you could think of Spock, you could think of Data from Star Trek, that kind of thing. Um, but yeah, I think at the end of the day, it can work. So more than anything, I'm just really happy that this just had such a classic feel of a Superman event. I think it really
Yeah,
worked on a lot of those different levels. So
agreed.
okay, let's move on. Up next, we have the aforementioned Green Arrow 13, also written by Joshua Williamson, art by Ammon K. Nahelipan, Romulo Fardo Jr. on colors, Troy Petrie on letters. Absolute. It says to be continued in Absolute Power, Part 1. Team Arrow strikes back. So yeah, give us your thoughts on this one. You were railing against it earlier, so I'm curious.
Well, I'm not going to rail against it that bad. I was just ranting. I'm just ranting a bit, but I'll focus on what I really liked about it, and that is that while while it's not necessary to pick up for Absolute Power, if you're a Leon Harper fan and a Roy Harper fan and a Cheshire fan, and you like that family. And I like that family, and I'm not a big fan of the Green Arrow family. I just like Roy Harper. I love the fact that Roy Harper, of course, Roy and Leon are going to go and rescue Cheshire. Leon wants to go and rescue her, and she's in Belrave prison in the northern. I'm assuming it's in the Arctic, and because Cheshire was captured by Amanda Waller, and obviously Roy Harper and Leon Harper, they basically break her out, and it's and I like the moments. I like the moments there, and there's even a moment where, after as she's being rescued, Cheshire, Leon Harper is understandably telling her mother, "Now, mother, as we leave, try not to kill any soldiers, try not to kill any prison guards," and she doesn't. No one gets killed by the looks of things, which I'm sure pleases Leon and Roy Harper. And Cheshire even shows a moment of a rare moment of kindness to Roy. Actually kisses Roy on the cheek for coming to rescue her. So I actually did enjoy these moments. In fact, I want to be clear here. Williamson's Green Arrow run, which I consider most of it to be a waste of paper, to be blunt, the moments that I don't consider to be a waste have to do with Roy Harper and very, very few moments like that. But we get that in this issue. And so I really appreciate that. Now, as this is happening, what interrupts their escape is Oliver Queen, and Oliver Queen. And if you've been reading the issues up until now, Oliver Queen he basically was blackmailed, or he agreed to obtain the sanctuary information from Amanda Waller. So all that information on the heroes that were kept at sanctuary, Oliver Queen stole and gave to Amanda Waller. This one I think is such an obvious plot point that Oliver Queen is obviously going to be the one who betrays Amanda Waller. He's pretending to be undercover, and in a moment of absolute zero believability, Roy Harper says, "No, I looked him in the eyes, and Oliver was really serious. Yeah, he's siding with Amanda Waller." Please, bitch, please. No one believes that for a second. I don't believe that for a second. I don't feel that's been set up well at all, but I'll buy it. Why? Because I think it's going to add an interesting element to Absolute Power. So I can rant about that. I did say it was a nitpick. Frankly, I like the fact that the Brainiac Queen might be something that Brainiac Queen, I can see her potentially betraying Waller in as absolute power moves forward. We have Oliver Queen, who I think is just doing this intentionally to because he knows Waller's up to something, so he's doing this, and he needs to convince Peacemaker, and Peacemaker seems to have bought in that Oliver is really, oh my God, he's turned. Oliver really is on the Wall side now, Waller's side, and so I'm going to accept it because there's too much. I'm happy to say that there's too much that I like. And that's a good thing. There's so much that I like about Absolute Power, the setup, that these little things, I'm going to try not to get bogged down to these little nitpicky things, because I do think there's a lot of potential for Absolute Power. It's basically 2 months long. It's starting off now. We're going to get 2 months long. Absolute Power feels like a miniature status quo change. Well, all the heroes are going to be losing their powers, and the villains and all the non-powered superheroes are going to be stepping up to the plate. How is all this going to meet out? How is all this going to wash up? What's going to float to the top once this flood happens of non-powered non-powered heroes and villains? So I'm really curious to see where things go. And in that respect, at the end here, with Oliver Queen being off the table as Green Arrow, Connor Hawke steps up to the plate. And who isn't a Connor Hawke fan? Come on. He steps up to the plate. And I got to tell you, my favorite Green Lantern my favorite Green Lantern was Kyle Rayner for the longest time. And then I love that classic, the Kyle Rayner Connor Hawke series, that Green Lantern Green Arrow series. I got all those issues. I loved Kyle Rayner and Connor Hawke. So I've always loved Connor Hawke as Green Arrow. And I would love if he replaced his dad. And it would be great if we could have Jay Nakamura and Oliver Queen meet untimely deaths and deaths in Absolute Power. That would just set the Ultimate DC Universe off with a bang in September.
Man, we are bloodthirsty. We're sworn all kinds of people to die. Well, once again, I'm going to plug my conversation with Mark Wade. That the questions: can Oliver Queen really be working? Like that's. I didn't spoil that it was Oliver Queen because at the time that I talked to him, these issues hadn't come out. We hadn't seen that Oliver was working with Amanda Waller, but I asked him that question because I was thinking along the lines of you. There's no way Oliver Queen, Green Arrow's not going to be fighting. I was like, what is this, Marvel? DC's version of Marvel's Civil War here?
Yeah.
I will say that his answer was interesting. His answer gives me pause. And if Amanda Waller, who the argument could be made started out as a hero, if she's going to be taken off the table, knock on wood, hopefully that happens at least for a while, give it a rest already. Could DC need a new villain or new antagonist that used to be a hero? Do they need a replacement for Amanda Waller? Could that replacement be Oliver Queen? Because I'm with you. I think Connor Hawke is a fan. Now, don't get me wrong. I do like Oliver Queen. I do think he serves a purpose. But the thing about Oliver Queen, as much as I collected his series back in the day, but it was funny. Like I started collecting his series like right around, I want to say right around issue 80. And I think Connor took over like maybe 84, 85 is when I started collecting, around that number. And then Connor took over, I think, in 100 maybe or 90. I can't remember. I remember I only read a few issues and then he got killed. Like Superman was trying to save him. He was on this plane. He was holding a dead man switch. Plane was going to explode. Superman couldn't save him. He died. And yeah, Connor Hawke took over. So I actually collected, like I had more issues of that series that starred Connor Hawke as Green Arrow than I did as Oliver Queen. But he's a classic character. He's been around for a long time, but at times he can be tiresome. He's always spouting this or that, very much a liberal hero. And don't get me wrong, I'm pretty progressive myself, but you just get tired of somebody that's constantly berating others when, you look at the things that he doesn't necessarily put his money where his mouth is all the time. So yeah, he can be tiresome. So yeah, I wouldn't mind. It would be interesting if he does go that route of basically as a replacement for Waller, carry on her work as it were. I could see that. Yeah. So we'll see. And Connor Hawke stays as as Green Arrow. So we'll see. Um, but yeah, again, like you guys, you gotta go. You want to know about Absolute Power? You gotta go listen to what Bark says
All right.
because there's a lot that he hints at. You know, you were talking about so after Absolute Power, Connor Hawk is Green Arrow, or this person is that. That's another one of the questions I asked him. You know, you got to be. I know you can't spoil, but what does the DC universe look like on the other side of this? And some of the things he had to say were really like there were things I hadn't thought about. Like when I asked him that question, I was more asking it like, what is the relationship between the general populace of the DC universe look like in as far as their attitude towards the heroes? Like
Mhm.
do they get their powers back and then the general populace realizes, hey, Amanda Waller tricked us, you know, we're in the hero's corner again, we're fighting, or do they have to earn the trust back? Is the trust not there at all? Like what does that look like? That's more what I was asking, but he took it as what does it look like what do the heroes look like, what do they look like after they get their powers back, that sort of thing. So he answered that, which was interesting, not something that I even sort of thought of. And then I, you know, asked him about like what I specifically was asking about. But yeah, a lot of information in there. Um, so yeah, what this means for Green Arrow, what this means for Oliver Queen. If I had to guess, like, you know, if somebody's saying, all right, you got to put some money on it, what's your guess coming out of Absolute Power? Because we know Green Arrow is going to continue. We know Joshua Williamson's not going to be on the title anymore. We know somebody else is going to take over. What does it look like? My money would be on this Green Arrow title on the other side of Absolute Power stars Connor Hawk as Green Arrow and not Oliver Queen. Whether that means Oliver has taken Amanda's place as this villain, maybe he'd be more of a pseudo villain or an anti-hero, or is he truly on board for his own reasons with whatever Amanda's doing during Absolute Power, and then when she's defeated, he sort of goes away in shame, like realizes the mistake he made and says, hey, I need to step back from the role of Green Arrow. I could see that happening as well. Either way, I think this title, you know, we know it gets a new creative team. It's going to have a new direction. I think it'll be Connor Hawk. I wouldn't go so far as to say, like you did, that it's been a waste of paper, but what I'll say is it's been slowly paced. It's been too slowly paced. Not enough has happened. I mean, we're on issue 13. We're a year in here, and not really much has happened. It's been that sort of convoluted Green Arrow family story that felt like, as slow as it was, it still felt like it was missing something. Like it wasn't explained well, or
Yeah.
like
It's missing a
motivation
story,
for
in my
Merlin.
opinion, but
Yeah, yeah, we
whatever.
get where you're at with it.
Yeah.
Um, and then from there, immediately went into a build up for Absolute Power.
Yeah.
So I feel like I think back on previous Green Arrow series, and there's been a lot more meat on the bone. This has just felt very much propelled by the art. It's had great art throughout, and yeah, the story, the like the density of story, the impact of story, the fullness of the story, it just hasn't been there. It's
Well,
felt a
Joshua
little.
Williamson did say in an interview that one of the reasons why he's cutting back on some titles, he's moving away from Green Arrow. He's going to stop being the writer on this and some other DC titles. And he talked about having burnout, and he
Oh
did
yeah,
mention that he felt some of his stories were suffering because of that. And he didn't say which ones, but I think some of us can speculate that maybe one of them where he experienced burnout on. It wouldn't surprise me if it was Green Arrow because it just but that's neither here nor there. That's just, but because I want to give props to Williamson. I mean, he works his ass off. He's a good soldier for DC. He's working on the Energon universe, his own title at Image, Dark Ride. I mean, the guy has worked his butt off trying to please comic fans, and all around he's there's a reason why he's up there with the A-listers. And notwithstanding some of my I've never held back on my harsh criticism at times, but I also give him props for Superman and his Robin series, which so there's been some of his stuff that I've really liked as well. But kudos to him for the efforts that he's put into the titles that he has.
yeah. One of the things I will say, about this issue, we've talked about we've debated the merits of having this be a family book, right? Like the Green Arrow family, and certainly there's all these characters that are sort of derivative of Green Arrow, and they're in this book. Um, I go back and forth because I do enjoy seeing these characters. I like you. I'm not as invested in the whole um, Roy Harper, Leanne, Cheshire relationship dynamic as you are, but I do enjoy it. I enjoy seeing these characters interact. Red Arrow, man, Miko, um, Arrowette, yeah, I could kind of do without, but I do like Arsenal. I do like him as a character. So, do I want this to be just the Connor Hawk show? Do I want it to be more of a team book on the other side of it? I'm not really sure. What might be fun is to almost have it be like a Batman Brave and the Bold back in the day. So you always have Connor, and then for a particular arc, he's teaming up with one other person from the Arrow family, just so it doesn't feel completely like a team book. But we do get a little bit without being kind of overwhelmed, because that's another part of maybe why, and not only why Joshua got burnt out, but why we felt like it was lacking. Like the cast was when the cast is so big, you have to give everybody a little bit of time, and then you don't get to dive deep on any one character. Maybe that's what it was. So yeah, I do agree this isn't 100% necessary for absolute power, but I think it does provide context. I think it will enrich the absolute powers storyline, and I think if it is the Connor Hawk show on the other side of this of absolute power, you're going to want to have read this, because again, this is part one of Team Arrow Strikes Back. But we do know this arc is going to be, this next arc, whatever 4 or 5, 6 issues, it's all going to be absolute power tie-in for sure.
But I still maintain, and I said this off the air before we went on, that imagine how I think it would have been cooler to have Green Arrow return, not in this series by Joshua Williamson, but just have him return as one of the lieutenants of Amanda Waller. That would have been awesome, and then show why. That would have been more cool, in my opinion, as opposed to this watered down family, blah blah. And then instead of having a Green Arrow series, I would have just had an Arsenal series with Lee and Harper and Cheshire. But that's me playing script doctor, and that's my another one of my mini.
Yeah, I mean, it could have worked. It would have really had to move some stuff around. You would have had to have Roy Harper be the one that was blackmailed by Waller to go and get the information from Sanctuary.
Well, that would never have had to have happened. We that could have happened off. That could have been a one-off. I don't think the Sanctuary thing was all that important. Because that could have been.
It's going to end up being. Yeah, it's going to end up being really important. That the Sentry information is how they build the Amazo robots to go up against any particular hero, right? Like you want the hero that goes against Superman or Batman or whoever. You get their their stuff from Sanctuary to help give them the edge. Yeah. But you're right. I mean, it would have been super impactful if Cheshire and Leanne are climbing down the side of the wall there, and Roy Harper stands there. Okay, my turn, and then he thinks Oliver's dead, and he turns around like, Ollie. He says, "What the hell are you doing here?" Be like, "What are you doing alive? Like, what are you?" Yeah, that could have been a moment. That could have been a moment for sure. So, anyway, let's move on. Up next, we have Zatanna, Bring Down the House, issue number 1. This is a Black Label book written by Mariko Tamaki, drawn and colored by Javier Rodriguez, lettered by Hassan Otsman Elhau. This is a very different Zatanna. She's performing as she won't call herself a magician, but she's a performer in Vegas. She says she does tricks. She doesn't use magic. We see some flashbacks to when she was a kid trying to do magic. Things went wrong. We see her father at one point, Zatara. We know that's going to be a thing, which it's sort of always a thing with Zatanna at some point. But it definitely has a different feel than as far as characterization than any Zatanna we've seen before. She doesn't have a lot of self-confidence, which I think is one of the characteristic trademarks of the Zatanna of the main DCU, that she's a pretty confident person. So I am intrigued by this, and I do like the line work. I think the line work is pretty solid. It almost has like this mod late 60s, early 70s type vibe from Javier Rodriguez. But what I don't like is the coloring. I don't care for Rodriguez. He's coloring his own artwork, which is great because he gets to make it look exactly what he wants it to look like in terms of, the line work and the textures and that sort of thing. But I don't really care for the colors. They're almost washed out a little bit in a way. It kind of reminds me of the type of colors that we've been seeing on the Birds of Prey series, which I'm not a fan of either. I prefer you go brighter, and give it a little more of a traditional superhero feel. But that's just my own personal preference. So overall, I enjoyed this. I'm not sure what exactly is going on yet with Zatanna. There's a mysterious person that keeps showing up in her audience that she confronts during one of her shows at one point that clearly knows a lot about Zatanna, maybe more than Zatanna knows about herself. So remains to be seen who this person is and what they want. Although there's hints that it's going to involve her father. So we'll see how that all plays out. But overall, I think a strong first issue. I enjoyed it. What do you think?
I got mixed feelings about it. I'm not. It's not my. Visually, it's not the type of when I enjoy comics. When I see Zatanna, Zatanna is right up there with a Power Girl and Catwoman, and it is straight up. It's a sexually provocative character and ought to be drawn as such. And part of the appeal of her magic, not tricks, her magic is the fact that one of her secret weapons is the fact that she's so hot looking. Same thing with Power Girl. I mean, her sexuality, her powerful looks, the fact she looks gorgeous. I associated that with Zatanna. That clearly is just there are pages here where Zatanna actually looks sexy. Most of the time, it just doesn't. I'm not a fan of the style of Rodriguez's art. Having said that, I very quickly became accustomed to it, and it's pretty good. It is. It's pretty good, and the story is intriguing. It's Black Label. I guess Black Label has come to mean out of continuity, and that's what you said. That's all Black Label can mean at this point, because it certainly can't mean adult or anything like this, because this is like really straightforward storytelling. It seems really by the numbers. I got to tell you right off the bat, in terms of a story itself, she's in Vegas for some reasons, which I hope are going to be told in future issues. Here is Zatanna. She could be a magician working for this Millennium Hotel Group, making millions, but instead she wants to work for nothing in the Golden Dice Hotel in Vegas. Why? Why work in a hotel where you're performing in front with not even sold out crowds when you can work for a Millennium Group making millions of dollars? That's established early on. So does she have some hidden insecurities that she doesn't actually want to be successful? Because she really does come across as insecure. It's not. I don't know if it's just a lack of confidence. If I'm thinking about the mainstream Zatanna, I'm thinking that this is out of character, but I can't, because it's Black Label, so it's likely out of continuity. And so now I'm asking, okay, well, why is this character Zatanna out of character? It hints that she's got some dysfunction growing up. She wanted to be a magician. She wasn't very good at it. She got some help from her father, yeah, and eventually she became really good. But then all of it, Zatanna herself says in this issue that, oh, I don't do magic, I do tricks. Well, right away, again, if I'm being honest, all right, well, that's really a kind of a dumb thing to say. Zatanna is a magician. Why is she thinking she only does tricks? This must be a really young Zatanna? But it can't be a really young Zatanna, because if she would have to be old enough and established enough to be offered $1 million contract in Vegas. So it can't be an older Zatanna. And an older Zatanna who's clearly successful from being a magician, or ought to be, but she's talking about she only likes tricks. So there has to be more to this story. This is all set up. I get it. And I might sound a little harsh. But as a credit to Marika Tamaki, the writer, I'm on board, because I want to know where this is going. I'm on board because this person who's in her audience, up to 12 times, this person who's been hiding in, not even hiding, but in plain sight in her audience, seems to be somebody who's more fascinated with magics and doesn't like tricks, and then hints to her that that the passing of her father might have to do with her. And so clearly this is going to be going into some sort of childhood. I'm guessing just based on Marika Tamaki's past writing, this is going to go back into some childhood trauma of Zatanna and what have you. And there might be an interesting, some interesting plot points there moving forward. I'm not sure how many issues this is, but I'm on board. I'm on board, and I actually really like. I want to give a shout out to the cover. I actually, even though it's not as provocative a cover as a Pyrian fanboy like me likes. I actually really like it. I like the red background. I like how it pops up the page. How she's holding the cards behind her back. I thought it looked really good. She's holding a royal flush. It looks really good. So props that way. So overall, I this was a recommend for me.
Yeah, it's funny. Like Zatanna's a magician. She's this, she's that, whatever. All I can say is, I mean, yeah, the Zatanna we know is that, but we got to keep in mind that this is it's Black Label. It's out of continuity. This is a new Zatanna, a different one. So I think you gotta be willing to throw out anything you think you know about the character, because this is a different version. When it's all said and done, when the series is finished, then we can kind of debate on whether it was successful or not, changing her into this different character. I also think it is a young Zatanna. She definitely doesn't have confidence. Why would she be offered $1 million contract if she doesn't have experience? Who doesn't even call herself a magician? Well, maybe that the people at the other hotel realize her potential. It could be they have some connection to her father, the past, that sort of thing. Like, yeah, we just don't know enough
Yeah.
at this point to say one way or the other. So anyway, let's move on. Up next, we have Power Girl number 10. It's Crushin' Time from writer Leah Williams, pencils by Eduardo Pansica, inks by Julio Ferreira, colors by Romulo Fajardo Jr. This might be my least favorite issue of this Power Girl series so far. I feel like we barely got any Power Girl in it. I felt like the Pansica art, which I normally really enjoy, felt a little rushed. Again, we've got washed out colors that didn't do much for me. And I'm sort of struggling with Power Girl at this point. Like, they've wanted to make all these changes to her to make her feel like a different character from Supergirl. We've talked about the challenge of that. Frankly, the impossibility of that. Every time she's referred to as Paige, I cringe a little bit inside. But there's just not much here. For all the events that happen, the resolving of the storyline with Crush and the what do they call the Holiday Girls or what have you, and defeating the Zarnians that managed to stay on Earth when the rest of the Zarnians got teleported up to Brainiac's ship and then ultimately consumed by the Brainiac Queen. For all the events that happen in this, it's like I don't care. It sort of feels like nothing happens, and everything that we've gotten in terms of characterization for Power Girl up to this point feels like it's all on the surface. And I'm a fan of Leah Williams. I think Leah's got a lot of talent, and frankly, maybe it's just my own expectations that I know she can do something interesting with the character. We just haven't seen it yet. But I mean, we're 10 issues in. Like, I get that you had to tell this story, tie into House of Brainiac, what have you, and it may not have been what you wanted to do. But yeah, I just feel like something's missing, and I'm ready for the art to take a step forward as well. I mean, typically you get Pansica on pencils and Julio Ferreira inking him. That's just a recipe for success. But the Fajardo Jr. colors just didn't do it any favors. So yeah, wasn't a fan of this issue visually or narratively. The most interesting thing was the virus that seems to have some tie to the symbiote ship that infected the Kryptonian lion is still here, and still has some connection to Power Girl, calling himself Symbio now. So that plot thread is yet to be explored, and that does give me some hope that we'll have some interesting stories going forward. But for me, this issue is definitely one of the weaker ones of the series, if not the weakest so far. So, what are your thoughts on it?
It's funny. I actually disagree with you in terms of the least interesting. I think this is one of the better issues of the series so far. Now that may say something in terms of how good this series has been overall, but uh, I actually one of the reasons why I like this issue is probably because this is some interesting developments in the character of Crush. It was actually, I'm not necessarily a big fan of the Crush character, but she's one of the most, I think there was a lot of room to improve on the character of Crush. The last time we saw Crush, at least memorably in my mind, is when it was the Lobo Crush series, where she goes and frees Lobo from prison and Lobo ends up having her do his prison time for her. And it was a sort of a crazy storyline with that. Here, we don't know where Crush's girlfriend is, but Crush basically, Crush, by her own admission, Crush was a member of the Teen Titans. Her Teen Titans, of course, they disbanded, and then she has she formed this Holiday Girls. She's got this new gang, but then she's discovered more Zarnians, and just like her father Lobo, she actually is kind of curious. She sees more people like her, and she actually uses that in order to sort of set them up, because the Zarnians. This takes place alongside the events of House of Brainiac, where the Zarnians, sort of rogue Zarnians, instead of being on the ship where those Zarnians are killed by the Brainiac Queen, these rogue Zarnians are sort of like teenage Zarnians on Earth having fun and wreaking havoc, and ultimately Crush wants to meet them, and I thought emotionally here, I thought from a character perspective, I thought Lee Williams did a good job with Crush, showing that Crush's desire to, maybe even though she's setting up her fellow Zarnians, she does want to meet them. She doesn't want to kill them or hurt them, but there's some curiosity there, and I think she links that well to Power Girl herself. Can relate to feeling like a loner and being alone in the universe. It's just been recently that Kara, who's changed her name to Paige, has tried to foster some deeper connections, or accept some deeper connections to the Superman family as a whole. Granted, we could have more organic development in that respect. I don't know how much can be actually done in 12 issues, perhaps in Lee Williams' defense. So I'm prepared to cut her some slack in that. I love the Pensica art. Fajiro Jr. has always been one of my favorite colors, although I will admit to you that the colors do seem surprisingly muted here. Maybe it's just that the digital preview copies we received maybe weren't up to task. Maybe they'll pop off the page in the actual physical copy. I thought there were some great battle scenes between Crush and some of the pages I thought were really well done. And in any event, I didn't think it was, it ended surprisingly enough with the symbiote character, who's sort of like the lioness, anthropomorphic version of the symbiote ship. Power has made itself present near the end of this and ends up killing all the Zarnians, which I think was an important plot point. I think Leigh Williams was told, you got to kill the rogue Zarnians, because the only Zarnians left can be Lobo and Crush. So that's why that had to end that way. But overall, it wasn't bad. But I will agree that there's something missing in this Power Girl series, and that's just. But Leigh Williams continues to struggle to try to give Power Girl a life, and I think she needs more than having a telepathic roommate and an very odd choice for a soon-to-be boyfriend that we'll run into next issue. But we shall see.
So you thought it was one of the better issues of Power Girl because of Crush?
Basically, yeah, because of the guest star. Yeah, and because
that says it all right there. I don't think you get to say, this is a great Power Girl issue because of another character besides Power Girl.
Well, there's a lot of Batman issues I enjoy because of the villains, right? I mean, sometimes the villains make the story. I'm just saying it's not my least enjoyable since the beginning, and it doesn't have to be, because I mean the focus on Power Girl has always been I've always disagreed with the name change. There's a whole slew of things I can complain about, but in terms of me complaining about this series, this is an issue that I have less to complain about than in previous ones.
Yeah, I think it's different. Like liking a Batman issue because of the Batman villain, I think that's different than liking a Power Girl issue because of a
Oh, because I'm a
supporting
guest
character,
star.
because of a guest star, I guess. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, let's move on. Up next, we have Batman: Brave and the Bold, issue number 14. Four stories here: Nightwing and Deadman Down the Road, Part 2. Tim Seeley, writer. Kelly Jones, art. Michelle Madsen on colors. Rob Lee on letters. Time Jerks, Part 2. Mark Russell, writer. John McKell, artist. Mike Spicer, colors. Farron Delgado on letters. The Flash: A Day in the Life. Kevin Scott's the writer. Travis Mercer on art. Andrew Dahlhaus on colors. Steve Wands on letters. The Invader, Part 2. Joshua Hale Fikolov is the writer. Lissandro Esterin on art. Patricio Delpesh on colors. Becca Carey on letters. And then finally, The Evidence Remains. Hayden Sherman, writer and artist. Hassan Otsman Elhel on letters. So give us your thoughts on the Nightwing and Dead Man Down the Road issue or story.
Well, Nightwing, Deadman Down the Road. Kelly Jones is an artist. He's a classic Batman artist, and so a lot of people will be picking this up just for his art alone. I didn't mind, again, Deadman and Nightwing are characters that have something in common, and this story, Tim Seeley rightly picks up and sort of capitalizes on the similar themes in Nightwing and Deadman. The thing which stood out, the story was, I got some nitpicks on the story, but let's just say that what I love more than the story is the art. It really, it frustrates me, to be honest, because I wish there was a way to have Kelly Jones, because I don't think a lot of people are picking up Batman Brave and the Bold because of the price point. And now that's just me. I might be wrong on that. I hope I'm wrong on that in some respects. But I think that his art, I still think it's the type of art that deserves to be in a mainstream title. I'd like to see it more that way. Even if it was a horror title or something, or even frankly drawn Constantine or something more, along those lines. I like it here. I just wish more people could get their eyes on it. Because some of the shapes, the way that Deadman is drawn in particular, I'm sure Kelly Jones has drawn Deadman in the past. I just can't remember, other than the first chapter here. But some of the angles and the way that he's sort of drawn the skeleton of Deadman sticking out of his body, and some of the pages and the way that he's sort of just crafted the body of Boston Brand, just looks. It looks terrifying. Like, often Deadman is often drawn by artists as looking like a good guy. He doesn't look horrific, even though he's got white skin and he looks dead. He doesn't look evil. Here, Deadman looks creepy as hell, which is, frankly, that's the way you're supposed to look if you're called Deadman. Kelly Jones understands the assignment. And that's what I really like about it. And it's well done. Story-wise, it's all right. I honestly can't remember the specific plot points. I took notes on this. Unfortunately, I left them at work, so I don't want to just pretend I can remember all of it. So I'll pass it on to you if you can remember some of the story points here. I just remember feeling that it was kind of meh, but I enjoyed the art. So take it away.
Yeah, it is kind of meh. It's never a good thing when I'm reading a story and I'm like, how many pages is this? God, this is not over yet. I keep wanting it to be, or waiting for it to be over. Now, part of this is because I've never liked Kelly Jones' art. Just straight up. Like, back in the day when he was on Batman and everybody was celebrating his art, I just didn't get it. Like, how many scallops are on Batman's cape? How tall are his ears? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. And everybody's like, oh, this is like the greatest art. His art's gotten worse over the years, as that often happens, like artists are not as hungry, or they change their style or whatever. Like, the storytelling is not as strong as it used to be. Like, as much as I didn't care for his aesthetic, the storytelling was always really strong. Now the storytelling is not as good either. And it makes no sense that Deadman's ribs are sticking out the way that they are. Like, it just doesn't make sense. It's never been drawn like that before. It just looks stupid. Like, I hate this art. I hate it. Like, hate it. Like, I disliked Kelly Jones' art, always have, but I never hated it. But this art is bad, and that's part of the reason why I just can't wait for the story to be over. I think that I mean, normally I like Tim Seeley stuff, and I think with a different artist, I might be enjoying this more. Um, but I don't think it's Tim's best work. And then you pair it with Kelly Jones' art, and yeah, I'm just like, oh my god, can this be over? As far as what's actually happening in the story, yeah. So there was a woman that Nightwing tried to save from jumping off a bridge in Bloodhaven. He wasn't able to save her. She jumped off, um, and said something about, um, maybe we fall and never land or something like that. And apparently it's an old saying in the circus or whatever. So Nightwing ends up teaming up with Deadman, and they're riding the rails and trying to find carnivals and circus or what have you to see what her tie in might be. They get some information about an underground circus that's going on. They find out that this woman used to work for that underground circus, and apparently there's some sort of even more secret organization that maybe she got involved with, where she lost her life. So they're trying to solve the mystery of this woman's death. And if it sounds convoluted and a little confusing, it's because it's convoluted and a little confusing. And the art, in my mind, again, if you want it to be in service of the story, if you have a story that's not quite so straightforward, I think you need straightforward art. Kelly Jones does not have straightforward art here. So is it sort of terrific or terrifying? Yeah, it's terrifying in how bad it is, I guess. I just it's horror inspired, body horror inspired, or whatever, and it works on that level, certainly. And it does look creepy, but I don't think it looks good. But again, it's personal preference. I mean, Kelly Jones is a legend, and he put in a lot of work on Batman, and I get the aesthetic that he's going for. And I think aesthetically it does what it's supposed to do, which is make this feel like a creepy, spooky story. I just don't like the way that we get to that tone. So, all right. The Time Jerk story from Mark Russell, it's a Booster Gold story. I mean, what do you want, right? Like, Booster Gold made a mistake in the past, accidentally bumped the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs that kept it from impacting Earth. He travels back to the future. Humans have been extinct. They've been eaten by the dinosaurs before the dinosaurs all became vegans. Yeah, you heard that right. All the dinosaurs became vegans, which again, it's Mark Russell, and it's satirical, and it's not supposed to be realistic, but it's like some of those dinosaurs, they literally could not consume enough plant matter to maintain their skeletal and muscular structure. It's just not possible. They're too big. But again, maybe they've evolved over time. I don't specifically remember seeing any T-Rexes in this particular issue, but at the end of the day, Booster and Skeet's still a time bubble. They go back. They stop the asteroid from being diverted, and what that means for the future, well, I guess that remains to be seen. If the future has gone back to the future that Booster knows, or if something else might have happened instead. Because when they go back to the future to see if everything is okay, before they can even get back on Earth, they see an asteroid hurtling toward Earth right at the moment they get back. So one issue to go, and I'm sure it'll be appropriately humorous, as you come to expect from Mark Russell. So as far as the art, it's serviceable. It's nothing special, but it does the job. So what did you think of it?
I thought it was okay. It was. I thought, Mark Russell usually has he has all kinds of themes, and he obviously he deals a lot with parody, but he usually always has something to say with some hidden political commentary, some comedic parody of something. And I actually thought that it was interesting that there doesn't seem to be any moral dilemma that Booster has, or even Skeets, about, literally, I mean, okay, you prevented the asteroid from hitting the Earth that destroyed the dinosaurs, and that led to a huge civilization of dinosaurs, including the Jurassic League of America in the present day. But then you got no problem going back and undoing that, essentially destroying an entire billion population of dinosaurs. So, there's an ethical question there, a moral dilemma there that is sort of breezed over. It's a Booster Gold story, so yeah, it's supposed to be comedic and a joke, and yet it's kind of a dark theme when you think about it, because it's kind of like, well, that seems a little bit unfair to the dinosaurs. But now, having I enjoyed the way we had that Jurassic League series. I do think that the Jurassic League does exist in the multiverse, the DC multiverse. So this correcting of the timeline is the correcting, presumably, of Earth Prime's timeline, and so the Jurassic League still exists in another Earth. So I don't think we've lost it in that respect. But I just thought, really, this is one of those stories where I suppose it's kind of fun and goofy, but it's like, well, why does it exist? I don't really know, I guess, but it is what it is. But I have the same question for the next issue, for the next story that we're going to review in this Batman Brave and the Bold, and it's the Flash one, where it's just Barry Allen, a day in the life of Barry Allen, and it's got nothing to do with Batman. But of course, Booster Gold being in a Brave and Bold, a lot of these stories have nothing to do with Batman either. But that's my side digression, because I do think DC's made a mistake, and I'm going to say it again, calling out comic book Batman Brave and the Bold and abandoning the traditional trade dress and abandoning the traditional style of having a guest star with Batman for every issue of Brave and the Bold is the way you should go, as opposed to what they're doing here, which is a desperate attempt to get back at the ultimate failure of Batman Urban Legends. But mini rant over. My comments on the Flash story, I actually liked it. A day in the life of Barry Allen. He works his ass off. Barry Allen defeats all these things before he gets up. He gets up in the morning, and before Iris West even gets up, Barry Allen has battled the Reverse Flash, and he's helped out Batman. He's helped out Superman, and all before breakfast. He's an amazing character. I thought it was a decent enough story, but it felt like filler to me, but it was decent enough, and I thought the art was pretty good, and yeah. But beyond that, what do you think of it?
You know what I thought? Like, the first thing that came to mind as I was reading it, first of all, the Travis Mercer art is absolutely spectacular, and it felt like Barry Allen. It felt like a hero. The colors are bright, and I thought, well, this is what I want to read when I pick up a Flash comic. Yes, it was short. Yes, inconsequential. Yes, probably not ultimately memorable. Not something that's going to stick with me, because not really much of consequence happened. It does, but it does show accurately, I think, and in an entertaining fashion, what a day in the life of Barry Allen as the Flash would be. And this is now the third time, right? Two different Teen Titans stories from Kevin Scott, miniseries, and now this Flash story, where Kevin Scott is doing superhero work, where typically he's doing creator-owned stuff with a little bit of a horror feel, or he's working over in the Star Wars corner of the comic universe. He really hasn't done that much superhero stuff outside of that Teen Titans, which was the TV version of Titans, and now this Flash. But oh my God, after seeing this and sort of being starved for, let's say, a recognizable superheroic Flash since Jeremy Adams has left the book, can I be the first to say, can we get Kevin Scott and Travis Mercer on Flash when Cy Spurrier's done with his story?
Yeah, good
Please?
point. Yeah,
Please?
sure.
I'm
second
begging.
that opinion. I second that. Yeah.
In fact, I don't even need the end of Cy Spurrier's run. You can take him off now. I don't even care. And get these guys on there. And that story can never be resolved. I would not mind at all. Iris looks like Iris. She looks gorgeous. Barry looks youthful and energetic, as a Flash should. Um, as much as it's maybe not a memorable story, guess what? I can understand what happens from point A to point B to point C. There's no gobbledygook science word salad. Yeah. Reminds me why I like Flash as a character. That's what this story did. Complete palate cleanser for having read Flash 10. And that's one of the better issues of this Flash run. And this 3-4 page story is miles ahead of it. So I think that says everything that needs to be said. Was that the last?
No,
yeah. So yeah, no, yeah. I was thinking we just had the black and white, but no. Then we have the story of Batman and Guy Gardner from Joshua Hale Fikolov teaming up. It's interesting. I think this is one of those cases where it's not an art style that I enjoy. Lissandro Estrin, who we talked about before. But it's an art style that perfectly suits the creepiness and the moodiness of the story that's being told. And maybe I sound a little hypocritical because I'm bashing on Kelly Jones when he's getting the aesthetic right. Um, but the, Estrin art is not so stylized, and it's in my mind it's just easier on the eyes. It's easier to understand what's going on. It's not so esoteric as Kelly Jones art is, even though it is sort of moody. Uh, uh, Fikalov also gives some really great humor moments in the interactions between Guy Gardner and Batman, a little reminiscent of JLI back in the day. But it didn't really move the plot forward a heck of a lot. We start off in this story with Guy Gardner and Batman at the crash of the alien ship. They start following the trail of blood from the alien. They come across a woman, and Batman knows that this alien is emitting radiation, so he's dangerous. They come across a woman who's in distress because she's been affected by the radiation. She even has a radiation burn on her leg from where the alien touched her. So Batman sends Guy Gardner off to take the woman to the hospital, continues to track the alien, finds the alien, and then he's kind of overcome because clearly this alien has some sort of psychological or telepathic powers where he's seen into who Bruce Wayne is and seen, his the death of his parents and all that sort of stuff. So, and that's basically it. So yeah, not a lot, not a big chunk of story in terms of moving the narrative forward, but it is enjoyable. Again, I think the art is suitably creepy, and I did enjoy those humorous interactions between Batman and Guy Gardner because we had some of those humorous moments in the first uh, part of the story as well, last issue. So that's sort of a consistent feel so far in the story. So, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts on it?
I thought it was kind of funny because Batman was kind of a jerk. I mean, Guy Gardner is well known to be a jerk. Batman's kind of a jerk back to Guy Gardner and actually kind of wants to just give Guy Gardner something to do. Here, take this woman. She needs help. Get out of my sight. Get out of my way. Do this, do that. Do it now. Batman's, he's being typical of Batman, but Batman's the worst shade of Batman, the worst aspects of Batman's character when he can be a jerk to someone basically come out when he's around Guy Gardner. That comes back to haunt Batman in this issue, and I thought it was well played in the writing because Batman then at the end when he's being telepathically manipulated or psychologically bombarded by this Roswell alien because it has sort of a Roswell feel and the alien it's even a reference to Roswell and it looks like a Roswell alien. He's being attacked and he needs Guy Gardner's help. And it's like, well, whenever you've wanted Guy Gardner's help in the past, you've never wanted it after you've asked for it, Batman, but now you really do need it. So I thought it was not much happens at all in terms of like, it doesn't move forward very much. I mean, they were looking for the alien last issue and here Batman finds him, is psychologically attacked and Guy Gardner's nowhere to be found. That's it. That's all that happens. But, there's some humor there and there's some character work here. And I think this is the type of story that is more rewarding. And maybe those of us who are maybe more familiar with the Guy Gardner and Batman characters will get more out of this. Newer readers might find it a little bit more blasé, but it's not bad.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
a good way to put it. Blase. The last story by Hayden Sherman, who's more known as an artist, is pretty interesting. It's an introspection on Batman. Batman thinking about if he's actually making a difference. Is he making an impact? Is his impact felt? So I thought both in terms of kind of a think piece and art wise, it was done really, really well.
yeah, it was. I agree. And and the black and white actually reinforced it. This is another example every now and then, and I often get this when once in a blue moon I'll read a manga or something, and it's like, wow, you know what? Black and white done right, it can reinforce some things. Sometimes the absence of color uh, creates just a starkness because it's the difference between black and white. Sometimes the issues are black and white, and sometimes just having that, it's that old idea that sometimes if you limit one's choices, you can have an impact on what those choices are, obviously. And sometimes when you give people too much choice, they can't make up their mind. And and I love what Sherman does masterfully here is that he sort of leads us, through. I mean, I think there's six and four, eight. What is there? 54 panels a page here for the first three pages, and just you're really getting like vignettes of what's going on in Batman's mind. He's reviewing his life because he wants to make sure it has purpose, that has meaning, and ultimately that's. And ultimately, he hopes that, and he knows that whatever he does, the evidence will remain, and that's the name of the story: is the evidence remains. And of course, all that evidence ultimately, a lot of it lies in his Batcave, and the final page is a really gorgeous depiction of the Batcave and all the things that are in the Batcave, including, of course, the giant penny and the dinosaur. Beautiful art, and for a short story, and this is actually the type of story that I think has a lot of impact. In this issue, I actually enjoyed this story more. It's black and white. I enjoyed this story more because it was short, sweet, and to the point. The art was fantastic, and it actually had a lot to say. And I love going through the various pages. There's even one panel where it basically has panels interspersed on a bat symbol, which I thought was very cleverly done by Sherman. And just the pages themselves with all those panels, it was like a story puzzle where you could put together the story in terms of what Batman was thinking and his thought processes and what was going through his mind. And I thought it was very, very well done.
Yeah, I agree. Hayden is a spectacular artist, and strong writing here as well. So, all right. Up next, we have the penultimate issue of Penguin. This is probably another of your possibilities for Book of the Week. Written by Tom King, Rafael Delatorre on art, Marcelo Maiello on colors, Clayton Cowell on letters. This may be one we disagree on as well. So I'm going to kick it over to you to start. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, first off, I'm going to say I don't want to leave anybody in suspense. This is definitely not one of my picks of the week. I thought that I just feel like I guess in hindsight, if I review the build up to this issue, all the things that are addressed in this issue, this is basically the beginning of Penguin's fall from grace, because the previous 10 issues really built up how the Penguin was returning to Gotham, and he was setting himself up to be, he had the Help, he had the 4th of July, he had the Black Spider, he was successfully manipulating and continuing to manipulate and collaborate with Batman and fooling Batman, and he managed to manipulate everybody as he managed to accumulate a lot of gold, apparently a lot of money and a lot of power. And but this issue, all of it comes to a head, and there's a big fall from grace. I should also add that he managed to have manipulate the FBI, Lieutenant Espinosa of the FBI, the woman who swears a lot. He's successfully manipulating so many people. He's manipulating Batman, the authorities, his fellow mafioso members, and this is where it all falls apart for Penguin. And where now there's a lot going on here. Some I like what Tom King did. Some I will say that it feels a little bit. It feels like it's fallen down too fast. In the war, the Penguin wants to destroy his family. He wants to destroy his children, Addison and Adeline. I believe are their names, Addison and Adeline. His son and daughter basically took over, and he's trying to basically dethrone them. And but basically, unfortunately, his daughter Adeline has basically betrayed him, or she tells Batman that Penguin's been using him. Now, Batman's always known that, or he's always suspected it, and but to have it told to him so starkly, and just how much Penguin has been sort of doing this on purpose, causes Batman to abandon him. And then Penguin's daughter also tells everyone. She shares the news through various means. She shares it all with the rest of the underworld. She shares that information, and the Penguin's life begins to fall apart. He loses his wife, Lisa St. Clair leaves him. The Help even leaves him. His gold, all his money and resources are stolen. Batman finds it's where the money is located, and it takes Penguin's money away. So the Penguin is essentially without funding, without money, without the help, literally, without yeah, even the 4th of July are still on his side, but he's falling. His empire is crumbling, and there's a big hit out. Everybody wants to kill the Joker. There's a hit on the Joker, and the Help near the end tells Batman what's going to be happening. There's an attack of the Penguin. It all builds to a head. The Penguin sort of awaits his fate. He knows what's going to be happening. He's waiting for it, and there's this great big altercation. The apartment is attacked. The big attack that was alluded to in the very first issue 1, that led to Batman and Penguin drowning in the Batmobile in Gotham Harbor at the end of issue 1. The setup for that of what's happening begins here in issue 11, and we're going to get the culmination, of course, next issue in issue 12. And all of this falls apart. The Penguin's daughter also kills the Black Spider's boyfriend, so that goes in a horrible direction. And what I found most captivating for me in this issue, or most interesting is a better word, is how the Penguin, probably in the only moment of kindness, of genuine good that Penguin does in the entire series, he does here, and he lets the sparkler go of the 4th of July. He doesn't kill the sparkler. What we've seen of the Penguin through every single issue from issue 1 is that the Penguin has rarely shown any kindness or goodness. He's shown it to his wife, and you could argue that maybe he's got a love-hate relationship with his children, but he mostly hates them. He doesn't want them to be better than him. He had a wife at the beginning that he betrayed because he went back to being into the underworld life. Lisa St. Clair, he looks at with a grain of salt because he kind of hates her too, but they have a mutual respect for each other, but in all the wrong ways. But here the Penguin talks about being good when the sparkler is expecting to be killed. The sparkler, the member of the 4th of July, is expecting to be killed by the Help. He's expecting a bullet in his brain. But the Penguin doesn't do that. Instead, the Penguin gives him a bus ticket so he can take him to the bus depot so he could go back home to his family. I thought that was interesting because the Penguin says something very interesting here. He says that the Penguin Penguin's idea of good and evil under the script of Tom King is that Penguin doesn't understand the good has no utility. Between doing good and doing wrong, good and bad, bad and evil, good and evil, good has no utility. Doing something good has never given Penguin anything. Every time Penguin has tried to be good, it's come back to haunt him. Every time it's never served any of his needs being good. That's why he's never done it. That's why it's always been he only pretends to be good so that it serves one of his ends. And a good example is that at the beginning of this series where he pretends to care about that old lady who he ends up throwing off the building at the end. He was only using her to lull in Batman into this sort of like fake collaboration and that they were having. But so it's almost as if at the end, the Penguin is almost expecting that he's going to die. So he decides, even though it has no utility whatsoever, he's going to let someone go. And that's the sparkler. I thought that was just interesting. I'm not sure if that makes sense. I'm not sure if a lot of people, I'll be curious to know your thoughts on that particular scene. But in any event, I thought it was really, I thought that was interesting. The 4th of July gets wiped out. The remaining members gets wiped out in the apartment battle. Presumably in the battle, well, we know that the Penguin looks like the Penguin kills his own son, and ultimately the issue ends with Batman being told by the Help what's happening, and that Batman is off to the apartment complex where the Penguin is being attacked to see if he can rescue or prevent the bloodshed that's going to continue to occur, because the Penguin blackmails the FBI to bring in forces to essentially protect him against all these people that are going to be attacking the Penguin for revenge for him siding with Batman. And it the build up to this issue, I will say, there's a part of me that I think that there was some setup for it. So that is to say, there's setup for it if you just read this story. If you're familiar with the rest of the history of the Batman universe, this is Tom King playing in his own continuity. But as a story in and of itself, I think it actually, in a twisted kind of way, it works for me. So I didn't mind this. I didn't mind this as well as I actually thought this was an intriguing issue, and I didn't dislike it. I certainly didn't hate it, and I still think that this is going to read well. As I'm really curious to see how this ends, and I think this is going to read well as a 12-issue Penguin story. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so I thought you were going to just love this immensely. I thought it was okay, but in a way, it felt necessary. And we know it's the penultimate issue, so you're always going to have a little bit of a downturn in terms of, action and what have you, so that you can sort of build up to the big finale. It did seem interesting that all of a sudden, after spending 10 issues building Penguin up, he sort of has, as you said, a fall from grace here. But I'm not buying any of it. I'm not buying any of it. It feels like, from everything that we've seen, from how King has tried to make the Penguin feel formidable, it seems like a fake out, right? Like, he's got all these people close to him. He's shown the ability to wield all this power, and then all of a sudden he's got nothing. And it just seems like he's tricking everybody into thinking he's got nothing. His money's all gone. He has no influence or whatever. So the government will leave him alone. So Agent Bleep, however you want to say her name, will be like, well, he's of no use to us now because he's got nothing. He's about to be captured by Batman or killed by his children or whatever. When in reality, he set this all up so that he would be attacked. We see the two groups that are after him, that decide to attack, that basically kill each other off. We know, based on what we saw at the very beginning of the first issue, where, there's some giant, huge flaming conflagration in the background. Batman's talking to the Penguin in the Batmobile, as the flames are behind, and he's going, "How did you do this?" I'm taking this to be a fake out from Tom King. And we're going to find out that the Penguin actually was just two steps ahead of everybody else and just set this up so that at the end of the day, nobody's left standing but him, and he'll be in a position to take over, pick up all the fragments, take over any criminal organizations that are left. Batman won't have any evidence on him to throw him in Blackgate Penitentiary or whatever, and the Penguin will come out on top. That's what I think is going to happen. But kind of a little bit of a weird way to get there. Either it just seems really incongruous that we spent 10 issues building Penguin up just to tear him down, and so where are you going to leave him at the end of issue 12? Or it's exactly what I said, which isn't exactly the most original story from Tom King, right? So I was sort of surprised. I kind of expected you to say the same thing, like, oh, he's just two steps ahead, because it seems so obvious. That's got to be what it is, right? And it seems so obvious, but
I
I don't know.
almost
Maybe
hope so. Yeah, it could
maybe it
be.
was,
I mean,
yeah,
yeah.
maybe it was only obvious to me. Like, I don't know how it's anything but that, especially based on that opening scene with Batman, where Batman goes, "How did you do this?" Right? Because it seems like he's got nothing left. You mentioned it. Lisa St. Clair's left. The government's no longer going to protect him because he apparently doesn't have anything to offer. Batman's saying their collaboration is over. So yeah, it seems like he's at his lowest, when actually he's got everything right where he's got everybody right where he wants to be. I mean, that's how you make somebody formidable, right? When they think you think that they're at their weakest when they're actually at their strongest. So that's my take
Yeah.
on it.
Well,
We'll see how
it's
it
an
all.
interesting take. I just want to comment on your take because you could be right because it would be interesting because it would be if Oswald Cobblepot if this is all a fake out, he's cleaning the board.
Yeah.
He's cleaning the board and he almost needs to because he has to be seen as the victim from Batman. Like he's gotta get back to square one. He's got to eliminate all the riffraff and just he's because otherwise he could be blackmailed from his children for there's the fear of being further blackmailed by his own children was there. The fear of being found out by Batman was there. But now by putting it all out in the open and starting from scratch, then he'd be better off. But he's still missing his money unless he had other money or that was Batman still took his money and
Did he?
it's certainly well yeah
We didn't
Batman
see
left his
Batman
calling
take
card.
his money. There's a batarang, and you think Penguin doesn't have any number of batarangs laying around that Batman's thrown at him over the
Well,
years?
but he was doing that for the help. He told the help to go get his money, and then the help saw the batarang there. Maybe, but why would he need to fool the help? I mean, maybe he did. I mean, maybe he did. It just seemed like sort of an odd misdirection there. But maybe it is misdirection. It'll be curious to
Yeah,
see how this resolves.
100%. Misdirection. Then the help goes and spreads the word. Hey, Penguin doesn't have any money. Why? I thought you were working for the Penguin. Well, it turns out the Penguin doesn't have any money to pay me, so I'm not going to be. Again, it's like so the Penguin's not. It's like all of a sudden the Penguin wants to convince everybody he's not a threat, right? How did he get get out from under the thumb of government and Agent Bleep? Well, because I got nothing to offer you, right? They're not going to let him go just for the heck of it if he has value to them. But if he convinces them that he has no value, rather than him trying to escape or whatever, they're the ones pushing him out the door. So yeah, it seems obvious to me. Maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, that does it for the individual issues this week, everybody. We do have a number of collections that are out. Absolute Superman by Jeff Johns and Gary Frank is getting a hardcover. This collects Action Comics 858 to 863 and then 866 to 870, as well as Superman Secret Origin 1 through 6, stories from Action Comics 10, Superman New Krypton Special 1, Action Comics 900, and character designs by Gary Frank, as well as the Action Comics 858 script from Jeff Johns and a bunch of gallery images as well. Also, Batman Catwoman, the Gotham War hardcover, which collects those issues that tied in. A very divisive event for us. I can in good conscience recommend that. Don't think it's very good, but your mileage may vary. We also have an absolute edition of Final Crisis written by Grant Morrison. Something else I wouldn't recommend, Superman saving the day by singing a song. Yeah, I don't think so. But if you're a Grant Morrison fan, you'll probably love it. I'm not a Grant Morrison fan, so I did not. We also have Flash Year One trade paperback. This is the Joshua Williams story from Flash number 70 through 75. Lobo Big Fraggin' Compendium Book 1. It is, let's see, does it say how? Usually, yeah, 1,320 pages for $60. And it collects a crap ton of Lobo content. I'm not going to go through all of it because it's too much to list, but you get a ton of Simon Bisley art and a lot of the work of Keith Giffen, who created Lobo, the late great Keith Giffen, as well as Alan Grant. So if Lobo's your cup of tea, you're probably going to want to check that out. It's not bad. I mean, a lot of times these giant compendiums that are over 1,000 pages, this one being 1,320 pages, are $100 minimum. This one's only $60. So, and then finally, we've got Penguin Volume 1, The Prodigal Bird, which collects the first 6 issues of the Penguin series that we were just talking about. Actually, I take that back. It collects 0 through 7. 0 is an issue that collects a bunch of backups from the Batman series, and then it goes through 7, which is an interesting choice that they collect that. So that's 8 issues, but that only leaves 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 for the last. So this one's got 8 and the other one only has 5. That seems a little strange, but anyway, if you're so inclined, you want to get caught up with that, check it out. So that does it for the books and the collections. Pick of the week. I always make you go first. I guess I can go first this time.
Sure.
Let me just take a quick peek here. You know what? I think at the end of the day, I got to go with Primer number 4. But really, I'm giving the nod to the whole story. It was absolutely fantastic. That was what I had the most fun uh, reading this week, with an honorable mention to the final chapter of the House of Brainiac storyline from Joshua Williamson in the Superman issue. But yeah, I'm going with Primer. How about you?
Well, I narrowed it down to three for me. Between Absolute Power, Ground Zero, Primer number 4, and Superman issue 15. I thought were absolutely excellent. It's a tough choice, but I have made one, and I'm gonna go with Absolute Power, simply because of the setup, and I think the setup was really well. I thought the setup worked really well. The 3-stage story, the setup was I thought it was excellent. I think it was very much needed to show how Amanda Waller was how Amanda Waller is basically the one controlling Failsafe. Amanda Waller is the one controlling the Brainiac Queen. This sets up as to how and why that is the case, because this was so important for Absolute Power Ground Zero. Because I was in the months leading up to Absolute Power, we knew that there was going to be this new trinity. We were almost told that there was this new trinity of power. We're going to have Waller, the Brainiac Queen, and Failsafe. And oh my God, like how do these three ever get along with each other? They're all control freaks, all these villains. But it ends up, no, there's only one control freak, and that's Amanda Waller. She's the one in charge. And if you want to know how and why, pick up Absolute Power Ground Zero. It's accessible. I think it's entertaining. It's well done. Notwithstanding my feelings on Jay Nakamura, I'm just having a little fun. It's well worth the read. And I think it's, I know there's a lot of people talking about, maybe been harsh on DC lately, but, instead of waiting for September, I think the excitement begins here with Absolute Power Ground Zero, and I like this new miniature status quo that's being set up for the summer event. This is a summer event I'm actually really curious and looking forward to, and I've read those solicitations for leading up to September with some degree of there's a little bit of excitement there. So I'm hopefully my optimism won't be misplaced as we begin to review comic books next week, which are coming out on Wednesday, because Wednesday Warriors can now also collect DC Comics, because that's when DC Comics will come out starting next week. So our reviews will probably come out early, late Tuesday night or early Wednesday morning, right?
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, not a bad pick at all. I think ultimately it's kind of easy for me not to pick an Absolute Power book this week, because I know I'm gonna have a lot of opportunities for Absolute Power, which I'm highly anticipating. I'm even more excited about it after talking to Mark Wade. So be sure you head over and check out that interview with Mark, either on the Comic Source podcast feed or on the YouTube channel. So if you are listening to us on that feed, be sure you subscribe to Rocky's YouTube channel, where we host the DC Spotlight every week. So Comic Space Boom, ! Once you're there, you know what to do. Leave some comments, ring the notification bell, subscribe so you don't miss any of that content. And then the Comic Source YouTube channel is available as well, where we do daily Spawn interviews, all kinds of other stuff. San Diego Comic-Con coming up soon, so we'll have tons of coverage there. And if you are checking us out on YouTube and you want to listen to previous episodes of the Comic Source audio feed, just go to wherever you get your podcast, whatever platform or app is your favorite. Do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe. We appreciate the support as always. So that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Appreciate you joining as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
Catch you later.